In the vast expanse of our universe, there are enigmas, puzzles that defy reason, mysteries that stir the soul and leave even the brightest minds in awe. How did the ancient builders of the pyramids possess knowledge that we can barely comprehend today? What force lies behind the sudden disappearance of entire civilizations, vanishing without a trace? And why do certain inexplicable events continue to baffle scientists, leaving their minds racing for answers that may never come? Tonight, we delve into the heart of these unsolved mysteries, stories that have puzzled and haunted humanity for centuries. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the unknown. Beneath the vast, endless sky of modern-day Iraq lies a land once home to a civilization that has haunted the minds of historians and archaeologists for centuries. Here, along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in the heart of Mesopotamia, the Sumerians flourished. Yet their origins remain a mystery that stretches back more than 5,000 years. The city of Ur, with its towering ziggurats and intricate weathered clay tablets, stands as a silent testament to their existence, a civilization that left behind one of the earliest known written languages and monumental achievements in law, science, and engineering. But who were the Sumerians? Where did they come from? And how did they rise so suddenly to create a society that would lay the foundation for much of the ancient world? The historical record tells us that the Sumerians appeared in Mesopotamia around 3000 BC, establishing one of the first true urban societies. They built cities, developed a complex system of government, and created a written script, cuneiform, that would endure for millennia. These accomplishments seem to suggest a people who were not only innovative, but extraordinarily advanced for their time. But how did they acquire such knowledge, and from where did their culture emerge? Mainstream scholars point to a gradual evolution of human settlement in Mesopotamia, claiming that the Sumerians were part of a larger migration of peoples who began to settle in the fertile lands between the rivers. This theory, while widely accepted, does little to explain the sudden appearance of Sumerian culture, which seemed to emerge fully formed, with remarkable expertise in agriculture, architecture, and mathematics. Their cities appeared almost overnight, with urban centers that rivaled anything seen in the ancient world, complete with sophisticated governance, religious structures, and commerce. The question arises, could the Sumerians have been influenced by an earlier, unknown civilization? Some historians have speculated that there may have been a more ancient, advanced society in the region that laid the groundwork for Sumerian culture, perhaps a culture whose knowledge was passed down through generations or even across great distances. Could the Sumerians have inherited their knowledge from a vanished civilization, lost to time and erosion? Others have suggested that the Sumerians were not indigenous to the region at all, but were instead the descendants of an earlier, foreign people. Ancient texts, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, hint at the presence of mysterious gods who brought knowledge to the Sumerians, beings described in ways that evoke imagery of advanced technology or even extraterrestrial intervention. The Sumerians themselves referred to these gods as the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens to guide humanity. Were these gods simply mythological figures, or could they represent something more? Could the Sumerians have had contact with a civilization far beyond their time, a civilization whose influence continues to reverberate in the myths and legends of countless cultures? The archaeological record provides no clear answers. Excavations of ancient Sumerian sites have revealed intricate artifacts and tablets, many of which depict gods, celestial bodies, and strange symbols that remain puzzling to this day. Inscriptions on the clay tablets suggest a deep understanding of astronomy and mathematics, knowledge that many believe could not have been developed independently by a relatively small early civilization. And then there are the anomalies. Some scholars point to the advanced architectural techniques used in Sumerian ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids whose precision and scale suggest a level of engineering far beyond what might be expected for the time. How did they achieve such precision without the tools or knowledge that would later be developed by civilizations like the Egyptians or the Greeks? As we consider these questions, one thing becomes clear. The origin of the Sumerians remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Did they rise out of the ancient world through slow and steady evolution, or did they descend from a lost, more advanced culture that vanished long before the first cities of Ur were constructed? Or perhaps, is there an even more inexplicable answer, one that we have yet to uncover? The story of the Sumerians is not just the story of a civilization. It is a riddle that challenges everything we think we know about the origins of human culture and intelligence. And as we continue to search for answers, the question remains: what hidden truths lie buried beneath the sands of time? As we continue to explore the mysteries of ancient civilizations, we are drawn to another enigma that has confounded archaeologists, historians, and scientists for decades. A place that, much like the sudden appearance of the Sumerians in Mesopotamia, raises more questions than answers. It's a site buried deep beneath the earth in the sun-scorched hills of southeastern Turkey, not far from the borders of Palestine. Here, in the remote region of Anatolia, lies a structure that predates Stonehenge, the Egyptian pyramids, and even the earliest Sumerian cities. This is Göbekli Tepe, an ancient complex so advanced for its time, it challenges everything we thought we knew about the dawn of human civilization. Göbekli Tepe was discovered in the mid-1990s, and since then, it has captivated the imagination of scholars and researchers around the world. The site consists of massive stone pillars, some weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in circular enclosures with intricate carvings of animals, lions, snakes, scorpions, and birds engraved into the surfaces. These pillars are arranged in a series of concentric circles, and in some places, the stones are so finely shaped and placed with such precision that it's hard to believe they were erected by hunter-gatherers, as the prevailing theory suggests. But the most shocking aspect of Göbekli Tepe is its age. Radiocarbon dating has placed the construction of the site at around 9,600 BC, which is nearly 12,000 years ago, a time when human societies were still primarily nomadic, living in small tribes and subsisting on hunting and gathering. The idea that such a sophisticated, monumental structure could have been built during this period is baffling. How could a people with no written language, no advanced tools, and no settled agricultural society have created a site of such complexity and scale? And perhaps more importantly, why? Mainstream scholars have long been puzzled by these questions. Some have suggested that Göbekli Tepe was a religious or ceremonial site, a place where ancient peoples gathered to worship, communicate with the divine, or mark the changing seasons. The carvings on the stones certainly suggest a spiritual or symbolic purpose, with images of animals and abstract symbols that could represent the connection between the earthly and the divine. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe was the birthplace of organized religion, a place where humanity first began to develop the rituals and beliefs that would later shape all the major faiths that followed. Others theorize that Göbekli Tepe was more than just a temple or a ceremonial center. Some have suggested that it might have been a kind of astronomical observatory, built to track the stars, the movements of the sun and moon, or the changing of the seasons. The alignment of the stones and the careful positioning of the pillars hint at a deep understanding of the cosmos, something that seems far beyond the capabilities of a Stone Age society. Could it be that the people who built Göbekli Tepe had advanced knowledge of the heavens, knowledge that was later lost to time? Yet, as we delve deeper into the mysteries surrounding the site, we begin to encounter ideas that move beyond conventional explanations. Some fringe theorists have suggested that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not just early humans, but perhaps a more advanced, even extraterrestrial civilization that shared their knowledge of architecture and astronomy. These theories, though highly speculative, reflect the awe and wonder that Göbekli Tepe has inspired. Could this ancient site be a remnant of a lost civilization, one whose influence stretched across the ages, leaving behind its enigmatic marks on the earth? Another theory proposes that Göbekli Tepe was part of a much larger network of sacred sites scattered across the ancient world. Some researchers have pointed to the fact that similar megalithic structures, like those found in the British Isles and parts of Europe, share striking similarities with the designs and layout of Göbekli Tepe. Could these sites be interconnected, part of an ancient global network of knowledge and belief that predated any known civilization? If so, why did this network vanish? And why was Göbekli Tepe buried deliberately, its purpose hidden for millennia? Perhaps the most unsettling question of all is this. If Göbekli Tepe was a place of such profound importance, a center of knowledge or spirituality, why was it abandoned and deliberately buried? The answer may lie in the changing climate of the region around 8000 BC. The end of the Ice Age brought about significant environmental shifts, and the people who once built and used Göbekli Tepe may have moved on, seeking more fertile lands for agriculture or abandoning the site for reasons that we may never fully understand. But the act of burying the site, a deliberate choice to conceal it from future generations, raises yet another mystery. Was it done to protect something? Was there something at Göbekli Tepe that was meant to stay hidden, locked away in time for reasons we may never know? As excavations continue, new findings only deepen the mystery. More enclosures have been uncovered, revealing even more elaborate carvings and massive stones. Yet, with each new discovery, the same questions persist. How could such a site have been created at a time when humanity was still in its infancy? What was its true purpose? And why was it abandoned, only to be buried for thousands of years? Göbekli Tepe stands as a monument to a time and people we barely understand. Its purpose, its creators, and the reasons for its abandonment remain shrouded in mystery. But one thing is certain. This ancient site, with its towering stones and cryptic carvings, is not merely an archaeological wonder. It is a riddle that calls us to look deeper into the past and to ask questions that may not have answers, at least, not yet. What truths might still lie hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? As we move from the mysteries of Göbekli Tepe, we now turn our attention to another ancient wonder, a site that has captivated the world for centuries, Stonehenge. Located on the windswept plains of southern England, its towering stones rise out of the earth like ancient sentinels, their purpose and the identities of their builders hidden in the mists of time. While Stonehenge is widely recognized as one of the most iconic monuments of prehistoric Britain, its origins remain shrouded in uncertainty, leaving us to wonder, who were the people behind its creation and what drove them to construct such an enigmatic structure? Stonehenge is not a single monument, but a complex of structures built over many centuries. The site as we know it today, with its iconic circle of massive stones, was constructed in multiple stages, spanning from around 3000 BC to 1500 BC. Yet, it is the earliest layers of Stonehenge, the first monuments built long before the towering trilithons we associate with the site today, that continue to puzzle archaeologists. The initial construction of Stonehenge began around 3100 BC, during a time when human society in Britain was still in its nascent stages. A series of earthworks and wooden posts marked the earliest phase of the site, with a circular ditch and bank surrounding the area. Within this sacred space, a ring of timber posts, believed to be aligned with key astronomical events, was erected. But who were these people? How did they know how to create such a structure, and what did they hope to achieve? Mainstream archaeologists suggest that Stonehenge's earliest layers were likely constructed by a society of skilled Neolithic farmers, a people who had begun to settle in Britain after centuries of wandering as hunter-gatherers. With the advent of farming, these early Britons had more time to develop social and ceremonial structures, and they may have used Stonehenge as a place for religious or seasonal rituals, perhaps tied to the cycles of the sun and the moon. The alignment of the stones with the solstices, the sun rising directly over the heel stone on the summer solstice and setting in alignment with the central axis of the site on the winter solstice, strongly suggests that Stonehenge was a site of astronomical importance. It's possible that the builders used the monument to track the movement of the stars and the sun, marking the changing of the seasons and the agricultural calendar. Yet, even with these insights, many questions remain unanswered. Who exactly were the people who erected these early structures? The Neolithic period in Britain was not the only one to witness the rise of monumental architecture. Civilizations around the world were building similar structures. But what made Stonehenge so unique? Was it the knowledge of astronomy that set its builders apart? Or did they possess some other form of knowledge, perhaps passed down from a distant and even more ancient civilization? While the Neolithic explanation is the most widely accepted, alternative theories about the identity of Stonehenge's builders continue to emerge. Some have proposed that the construction of Stonehenge predates the Neolithic altogether, and that the people who created the first structures were not part of the farming revolution, but were instead part of a lost, more advanced society, one that had knowledge far beyond what was typical for the time. Could Stonehenge be a remnant of an ancient civilization, whose people understood not only the cosmos, but the secrets of the earth itself? One of the more speculative theories suggests that Stonehenge may have been built by a group of people who were either influenced by or in contact with a far-flung civilization, possibly from the Mediterranean or even beyond. Some proponents of this idea point to the fact that similar megalithic structures exist across Europe and parts of North Africa, suggesting a common tradition of stone construction that spanned vast distances. Was there a cultural network that extended from the Mediterranean to the British Isles, and did these people leave their mark on Stonehenge? Could knowledge of the site's design and function have been passed along to the Britons from an older, advanced culture, one whose name has been lost to history? Another theory delves into the possibility of an extraterrestrial influence. While this idea remains highly speculative, it has gained traction among some who are captivated by the precision with which Stonehenge was constructed. How could a society with no advanced tools or machinery have created such a massive structure with such accuracy? Some theorists suggest that the builders may have had help from beings outside of our world, beings who imparted their knowledge of engineering and astronomy to the people of ancient Britain. While this idea remains outside the mainstream, it is an indication of just how awe-inspiring and mysterious Stonehenge remains. And then, there is the question of the stones themselves. The majority of Stonehenge's most famous stones, the upright sarsens, weigh up to 25 tons each, and it is widely believed that they were transported from the Marlborough Downs, about 20 miles away. But how were these immense stones moved? The physical challenge of transporting these massive stones from their source to Stonehenge is staggering, especially given the tools available to the builders at the time. Some archaeologists believe that the stones were moved using a system of sledges and rolling logs, but the logistics of this feat are still the subject of much debate. Were there methods of transport that have been lost to time, or did the builders possess an unknown knowledge of engineering that allowed them to move these colossal stones with relative ease? Perhaps the most enduring mystery of Stonehenge, especially the early layers, is its purpose. While it's widely accepted that the site had astronomical and ritual significance, the deeper question of why it was built remains unresolved. Was it purely a religious site, or did it have a more practical function, perhaps related to the needs of a growing agricultural society? Was it a place of power, a symbol of unity for early Britons? Or was it something far more symbolic, an expression of a deep, shared understanding of the cosmos, designed to bridge the gap between the heavens and the earth? As we continue to excavate and study the site, each new discovery only adds more layers to the puzzle. The early stages of Stonehenge, with their enigmatic purpose and the identity of their builders still unknown, leave us with more questions than answers. And as the years go by, the mystery of who first constructed this ancient monument and why they did so remains unsolved. Could the key to unlocking Stonehenge's secrets still lie hidden, waiting to be discovered beneath the soil of this ancient site? As we venture deeper into the ancient world, we find ourselves once again in the heart of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The vast, arid plains between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were home to the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, whose advancements in law, architecture, and mathematics laid the foundation for many of the systems we still use today. Yet, amidst these achievements, one of the most profound and perplexing developments remains the sudden appearance of writing itself, a phenomenon that seems to have emerged without any clear precedent. Around 3300 BC, in the southern region of Mesopotamia, an entirely new form of communication began to take shape. In a society that had been deeply rooted in oral traditions, a startling shift occurred. Symbols were carved into clay tablets. These symbols, small, simple marks at first, slowly evolved into a complex script that would eventually become cuneiform, one of the earliest systems of writing in human history. But what caused this sudden leap from spoken word to written record? And how did such an advanced system of writing emerge seemingly overnight? The discovery of writing in Mesopotamia is often considered one of the most important milestones in human history. It marked the transition from prehistory to recorded history, allowing civilizations to document everything from laws to trade transactions, from religious texts to personal correspondence. The first examples of writing were inscribed on clay tablets, fragile yet resilient enough to survive millennia. These early inscriptions were not written in any modern alphabet, but rather in a series of wedge-shaped impressions, which gave the script its name, cuneiform, meaning wedge-shaped in Latin. Initially, these symbols were used for simple record-keeping, primarily to track goods and services, likely as a way to manage the increasingly complex economies of Mesopotamian cities. Yet over time, these marks became more sophisticated, evolving from a system of pictographs to a fully functional script capable of expressing abstract ideas and complex narratives. By the time of the Sumerians, around 2500 BC, cuneiform had become a tool for writing laws, recording myths, and documenting historical events. But the question remains, how did a culture of people with no written language suddenly invent such an intricate system? Was this knowledge developed independently, or did it come from an external source? Archaeologists have long debated whether the Sumerians invented writing as an organic development of their society's needs, or whether it was the result of some kind of outside influence. One theory suggests that the Sumerians, as they transitioned from a nomadic to a settled agricultural lifestyle, found the need to document their increasing trade and resource management. With this new complexity in their societies, the need for writing as a record-keeping tool might have emerged naturally. But that explanation leaves one major question unanswered. How did they arrive at such a sophisticated system in such a short amount of time? While most scholars favor the idea that writing evolved as a response to the demands of a growing urban society, the speed and complexity of its development remain baffling. Unlike other technological advancements that evolved slowly over time, the Sumerians seemed to leap from a world of oral tradition to one of written documentation within a few centuries. Could this have been an idea that spread suddenly, perhaps through contact with a distant, advanced culture? Some suggest that trade networks, stretching across the ancient Near East, may have facilitated the exchange of ideas and technologies, allowing for the rapid spread of writing. Yet the mystery deepens when we consider the idea of divine or otherworldly influence. Ancient texts, including the famous Epic of Gilgamesh, describe encounters with gods, beings from the heavens who bestowed knowledge upon humanity. Could the sudden appearance of writing be linked to these gods? The Sumerians believed that their writing system was a gift from the gods, especially from the god of wisdom, Ninurta. The idea that writing could have been a divine revelation is not confined to the Sumerians alone. Many ancient cultures around the world share myths about gods or celestial beings imparting knowledge to humanity. Is it possible that the invention of writing was not entirely the product of human ingenuity, but rather a gift or inspiration from an external source? In the absence of definitive evidence, some researchers have proposed even more speculative theories. Could the rapid emergence of writing be the result of a much older, advanced civilization whose knowledge was passed down through generations? Some fringe theorists suggest that there might have been a global network of ancient civilizations, and that writing, along with other technologies, spread from a common source, perhaps a culture whose rise predates recorded history. Could this lost civilization have left behind the blueprint for writing, which the Sumerians then adapted to their own needs? And if so, what happened to this advanced civilization, and why did its knowledge become fragmented over time? As intriguing as these theories are, there is little evidence to support them. What we know for certain is that the Sumerians were the first to develop a system of writing in Mesopotamia, and it spread rapidly, influencing neighboring cultures like the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. By around 2000 BC, cuneiform was the dominant script across much of the ancient Near East. Yet the origins of this system, and the reasons behind its sudden appearance, remain elusive. Even more perplexing is the question of why writing emerged specifically in Mesopotamia at this particular moment in history. While writing systems would eventually develop in other parts of the world, such as Egypt and China, Mesopotamia seems to have been the birthplace of this transformative technology. Was it the unique combination of environmental, social, and cultural factors that made this part of the world the perfect incubator for the development of writing? Or was there something more, a hidden influence, a long-forgotten spark that made Mesopotamia the cradle of written language? As archaeologists continue to study ancient tablets and inscriptions, new discoveries continue to shed light on the development of writing. However, many questions still linger, and the mystery of how and why writing first appeared in Mesopotamia remains unresolved. Was it a purely human invention born from the needs of an evolving society, or was it the result of something far more profound? What might we still be missing, hidden in the ancient records that remain buried, waiting to be uncovered? The story of the origins of writing is one that continues to captivate our imaginations, a reminder that even in our modern world, some of humanity's oldest mysteries remain unsolved. Could the key to understanding the birth of written language still be hidden in the sands of time, waiting for us to unlock its secrets? As we journey deeper into the ancient past, we come upon another mystery, one that lies hidden in the remote plains of the Balkans, a riddle carved into the bones of a forgotten civilization. It is the enigma of the Vinča symbols, intricate, mysterious markings found on pottery, bones, and clay tablets at the ancient site of Vinča, near modern-day Belgrade, Serbia. The Vinča culture flourished around 5500 BC during the Neolithic period, and yet, despite its prominence, the true meaning of these symbols remains elusive, casting a shadow of mystery over what may have been one of Europe's earliest writing systems. The Vinča settlement, one of the oldest known Neolithic sites in Europe, is remarkable not only for its age, but for the sophistication of the people who lived there. The inhabitants of Vinča were skilled farmers, potters, and metalworkers, and their villages were hubs of cultural and technological innovation. They left behind tools, ornaments, and artifacts that reveal a society engaged in trade, art, and intricate social structures. Yet, it is the mysterious symbols, etched into pottery and other everyday objects, that have captured the attention of archaeologists and researchers. These symbols, numbering over 100 distinct characters, are unlike anything else found in Europe at the time. They resemble neither the hieroglyphs of Egypt nor the cuneiform script of Mesopotamia. Instead, they are a unique set of abstract marks, geometric shapes, spirals, and line patterns that suggest a form of communication. But what were these symbols meant to convey? And why did the Vinča people develop such a system? Mainstream scholars generally consider the Vinča symbols to be proto-writing, symbols that might have represented the earliest stages of written language, though not yet fully developed into a coherent script. Some suggest that these markings were used for record-keeping, marking ownership, or perhaps for ritualistic purposes, representing a means of communicating with the divine or the cosmos. Others believe that the symbols could have served as an early form of shorthand, used for trade and commerce as the Vinča culture grew in complexity. Yet, while these explanations are plausible, they do little to explain the sheer variety and complexity of the symbols themselves. The Vinča signs do not appear to follow a simple utilitarian pattern. Some are stylized representations of animals and humans, while others are more abstract, resembling geometric shapes like circles, triangles, and zigzags. These marks seem to be more than just practical tools for communication. They seem imbued with a deeper symbolic meaning. This is where the mystery deepens. Unlike other early forms of writing, such as the cuneiform script in Mesopotamia, which evolved from pictographs to more abstract characters over time, the Vinča symbols do not appear to follow a clear trajectory of development. They remain fixed in their form, with no discernible evolution from one period to the next. It is as though the Vinča people suddenly adopted a system of abstract symbols, and then, just as abruptly, stopped using them. Could the Vinča symbols have served a higher purpose? Some researchers speculate that these symbols were part of a religious or spiritual tradition, one that conveyed cosmological or mythological knowledge. The design of some of the symbols bears a striking resemblance to motifs found in other ancient cultures, suggesting that the Vinča people may have been part of a larger cultural network, connected by shared symbols and beliefs. Was this a proto-writing system, an attempt to record stories or history, or were these marks part of a ritualistic practice that had a deeper, more mysterious significance? More intriguing still are the speculative theories surrounding the Vinča script. Some suggest that the symbols might represent the remnants of an ancient, lost language, a language that was once used to communicate across a vast swath of prehistoric Europe. Could these symbols have been part of a larger system of communication, shared across tribes and regions, a precursor to the written languages that would eventually emerge in the ancient world? If so, why did this early form of writing fade into obscurity, never to develop into a fully realized system of writing? Other, more fringe theories propose that the Vinča symbols may not have been of human origin at all. Could they have been a form of communication passed down from an ancient, advanced civilization that existed long before the rise of the Vinča people? Some have speculated that these markings may have been the result of contact with extraterrestrial beings, or even time travelers. The abstract nature of the symbols, their seemingly sudden appearance, and their rapid disappearance from use have led some to suggest that the Vinča people may have encountered knowledge far beyond their time, knowledge that they tried to capture in symbols, but which they could not fully comprehend. Yet, despite the variety of theories, there is no conclusive evidence to support these more speculative ideas. Most scholars continue to view the Vinča symbols as a form of proto-writing, a precursor to the written word that was not fully developed or adopted. But the mystery remains. If the Vinča people had a form of written communication, Why didn't it evolve into a full writing system like cuneiform or hieroglyphs? And why, after centuries of use, did the symbols disappear, leaving behind no clear record of their meaning or purpose? The absence of further development in the Vinča script is one of the most perplexing aspects of the mystery. It seems as though the Vinča people, despite their advanced pottery, metallurgy, and social structures, were unable to take their written symbols to the next stage. Could they have abandoned the symbols for reasons we can't fathom? Perhaps because they found a better system, or perhaps because the symbols had become meaningless over time. Or is it possible that the meanings of the symbols were never fully understood, even by those who used them? As with many ancient mysteries, we are left with more questions than answers. The Vinča symbols stand as a testament to a lost world, a world that possessed knowledge and practices that we are only beginning to understand. And while we may never fully decipher the meaning of these marks, they continue to challenge our perceptions of early human communication and the rise of written language. The story of the Vinča symbols, like many ancient mysteries, beckons us to look beyond the surface of what we think we know about early civilizations. Were these symbols the first inkling of a sophisticated written language? Or are they something more, an encrypted message from a distant, forgotten past? What knowledge might still be buried in the symbols of the Vinča people, waiting to be uncovered? As we dig deeper into the past, the answers may be closer than we think, or they may remain forever hidden, a tantalizing enigma. As we continue our exploration of ancient mysteries, we turn our attention to a civilization that once thrived in the fertile lands of Eastern Europe, its influence spreading across what is now modern-day Ukraine, Moldova, and parts of Romania. The Cucuteni-Trypillia culture, as it is known, was one of the most advanced societies of its time, yet its sudden disappearance remains one of the great unsolved puzzles of archaeology. The question that lingers is, what happened to this enigmatic people, whose elaborate settlements and advanced technologies seem to have vanished without a trace? At its peak, between 3500 BC and 2500 BC, the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture was a formidable force, creating sprawling settlements that could house thousands of people. These settlements, often situated in the river valleys of the Dnieper, and Bug rivers, were far from primitive. They were centers of innovation and organization, boasting large, well-planned towns, some with defensive ditches and timber fortifications. The architecture was remarkably advanced for the time. Some of their homes were multi-room structures with clay walls, thatched roofs, and even fireplaces. But it's not just the size and complexity of their settlements that intrigue us. The Cucuteni-Trypillia people also left behind a rich cultural legacy, including intricately decorated pottery, figurines, and artwork that suggest a deeply spiritual society. Their pottery, often adorned with intricate patterns and motifs, is regarded as some of the finest from the prehistoric period. The figurines, many of which depict female forms, are thought to have had religious or fertility significance, indicating that the Cucuteni-Trypillia people had a well-developed belief system. Despite their achievements, the culture of Cucuteni-Trypillia disappeared almost as mysteriously as it had emerged. Around 2500 BC, the large settlements, which had once thrived with population densities rivaling those of some of the earliest urban centers, were abandoned. There is no clear evidence of violence, conquest, or natural disaster, no cataclysmic event that would explain their sudden disappearance. Instead, their villages simply seem to have emptied, their people vanishing from the archaeological record as quickly as they appeared. The question remains, why did a people so advanced in agriculture, craftsmanship, and social organization suddenly abandon their homes and settlements? One theory that has gained some traction suggests that the disappearance of the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture was the result of environmental changes. The region where they lived was subject to periodic climate fluctuations, and it is possible that the long-term changes in climate may have made the land less hospitable for farming. The increasingly erratic weather patterns could have disrupted agricultural production, leading to food shortages. In turn, this could have driven the people to abandon their settlements in search of more fertile land. But the evidence for this theory is inconclusive. While there is evidence of changing climate patterns, it's unclear whether these changes would have been severe enough to cause the rapid abandonment of entire settlements. Moreover, there is no direct evidence of famine or mass migration that would suggest a widespread environmental crisis. The Cucuteni-Trypillia people were skilled farmers, and their ability to adapt to varying climates over time is well documented. Could there have been another, more subtle factor at play? Some researchers have proposed that the disappearance of the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture could be related to social upheaval. Despite the apparent stability of their large settlements, there are indications that the culture may have been divided into distinct social groups. This could have led to internal conflicts, power struggles, or even the eventual collapse of the society. The fact that many of their settlements were abandoned without evidence of violent conquest raises the possibility of a societal breakdown, perhaps related to internal pressures or conflict over resources. If the social fabric of the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture began to unravel, it could have led to the mass abandonment of their villages and a dispersal of the population. Another theory suggests that the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture was absorbed by neighboring peoples, either through migration or cultural assimilation. The transition from the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture to the succeeding Bronze Age cultures in the region, such as the early Indo-Europeans, may have been a gradual process. Perhaps the Cucuteni-Trypillia people were not wiped out, but instead integrated into new societies, their customs and knowledge blending with those of the emerging cultures. If this was the case, it would explain the lack of a clear archaeological marker to indicate their disappearance. Perhaps the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture never truly vanished, but simply transformed. Then, there is the more speculative theory that the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture was part of a larger, ancient network of civilizations that spanned a much broader area than we currently understand. Some fringe theorists suggest that the people of Cucuteni-Trypillia may have been part of a lost civilization, one that had advanced knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and perhaps even metallurgy long before these technologies appeared in the surrounding regions. Could the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture have been a far-flung outpost of a global network of cultures that suddenly collapsed or retreated for reasons we cannot yet explain? If so, what happened to the rest of this civilization, and why is their knowledge not preserved in the historical record? There is also the possibility that the Cucuteni-Trypillia people did not disappear at all, but rather moved into the wilderness, abandoning their large urban settlements for reasons we may never fully understand. Perhaps in response to pressures, whether environmental, social, or spiritual, they chose to retreat to a simpler way of life, leaving their advanced towns behind. This idea has been supported by the fact that many of the surrounding regions still show evidence of a transition from the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture to more dispersed, smaller communities, where people continued to live in relative isolation. As we consider these theories, we are left with more questions than answers. The Cucuteni-Trypillia culture, with its advanced society, remarkable craftsmanship, and apparent mystery, has left us with an enduring puzzle. What could have caused such a profound shift, such a sudden disappearance, in a society that seemed to be thriving? Was it environmental change, social collapse, migration, or something else entirely? We may never know for sure what happened to the people of Cucuteni-Trypillia. Yet, as we continue to study their remains, their art, and their legacy, one thing is clear. Their mystery is not just a historical curiosity, it is a window into the complexities of human societies and the ways in which civilizations can rise and fall, leaving behind only traces for future generations to uncover. As we continue to peel back the layers of human history, some mysteries remain elusive, stubbornly resisting our best attempts at understanding. One such enigma lies in the heart of the Egyptian desert, a place far from the grandeur of the pyramids and the bustling life of ancient Cairo. Here, amidst the vast expanse of sand and rock, is a location that holds the secrets to an ancient civilization's knowledge of the stars, a place known as Nabta Playa. Nabta Playa is a prehistoric archaeological site located in southern Egypt, near the Nubian desert. For thousands of years, this site has remained largely ignored by the wider world, overshadowed by the more famous monuments of ancient Egypt. Yet beneath the surface, Nabta Playa contains one of the most mysterious and sophisticated features of the ancient world, a complex arrangement of megalithic stone structures, sometimes referred to as the Stonehenge of the desert. But unlike the famous Stonehenge of Britain, which was built around 3000 BC, Nabta Playa predates it by at least 1,000 years. The site consists of a series of large stone circles, some upright and others lying flat, scattered across a vast plateau. The largest of these stone circles measures about 50 feet, 15 meters, in diameter, with stones weighing several tons each. But it is not the size or arrangement of the stones that capture our imagination. It is their purpose. What were these stones meant to represent, and why were they placed so meticulously in the desert landscape? What makes Nabta Playa truly fascinating is that it appears to have been a sophisticated astronomical observatory, one of the earliest known in the world. The arrangement of the stones, along with other features like alignments to the solstices and lunar events, suggests that the people who built Nabta Playa had an advanced understanding of the cosmos. These early builders seem to have tracked the movements of the stars and planets with incredible precision, using the stones to mark key events in the celestial calendar. This knowledge would have been vital for agricultural societies, helping them track the changing seasons, anticipate floods, and ensure the timing of planting and harvesting. One of the most striking features of the site is the alignment of some of its stones with the rising and setting points of the sun and moon. For instance, one of the most significant alignments is to the summer solstice, with a series of stones acting as markers for the sun's position at dawn on the longest day of the year. This is a pattern that we see in other ancient sites, Stonehenge in Britain, and even the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. But what sets Nabta Playa apart is its age. The stone structures here were constructed around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, long before the Egyptians built their famous monuments, and far earlier than most other megalithic sites. But the purpose of these astronomical alignments remains a mystery. Was Nabta Playa a site of ritual and worship, a place where early humans sought to connect with the heavens? Or was it purely practical, an observatory designed to help the people of the time better understand their world and the cycles of nature? We do know that the people of Nabta Playa were not isolated, but were part of a broader network of ancient cultures in the region. Evidence suggests that they had connections to other prehistoric societies in North Africa and the Near East, which may have contributed to their advanced understanding of the stars. Some scholars believe that Nabta Playa may have been an early precursor to the more famous Egyptian astronomical systems. In fact, the knowledge of astronomy at Nabta Playa could have influenced the later development of the ancient Egyptian calendar, which was fundamental to their agricultural practices and religious observances. But the connection between Nabta Playa and the rise of ancient Egypt remains speculative. Were the builders of Nabta Playa the ancestors of the Egyptians, or were they an entirely separate civilization that left behind no trace beyond these enigmatic stones? One of the most intriguing aspects of Nabta Playa is the lack of written records. Unlike the Egyptians, who would later develop one of the most complex writing systems in the ancient world, the people of Nabta Playa left no inscriptions, no texts to explain their intentions or the meaning behind their stone structures. All we have are the stones themselves, silent, steadfast, and enigmatic. This absence of written language has led some to propose even more speculative theories about the site. Some fringe theorists suggest that the builders of Nabta Playa may have had access to knowledge that was lost to later civilizations, perhaps even knowledge passed down by an ancient, advanced society. They point to the incredible precision with which the site's astronomical alignments were created, and the way in which the structures seem to mirror celestial events. Could these early desert dwellers have been part of a larger, forgotten tradition of sky watchers who spread across the ancient world, sharing a deep understanding of the cosmos that has since been lost to time? Or could the knowledge of the stars have been imparted to them by extraterrestrial visitors, as some have speculated? While such theories remain outside mainstream archaeology, they reflect the awe and wonder that Nabta Playa continues to inspire. Others believe that the site was not just an observatory, but also a ceremonial center. The megalithic stone circles may have had a symbolic significance, serving as a focal point for ritualistic practices tied to the movement of the sun and stars. This would not be unusual for ancient cultures, who often constructed their monuments to align with celestial events, using these alignments as markers for religious festivals, agricultural cycles, and important life events. The people of Nabta Playa may have gathered at these stones to mark key moments in their calendar, from the winter solstice to the cycles of the moon, possibly connecting these events to agricultural rites or spiritual beliefs. Yet, for all the theories and ideas, the true purpose of Nabta Playa remains uncertain. Was it a place of science, religion, or something entirely different? We may never know for sure. But the site leaves us with a lingering question. How did these ancient people, who lived in a time long before the great pyramids and temples of Egypt, develop such an intricate understanding of the stars? Were they simply advanced observers of nature, or was there more to their knowledge than we can currently comprehend? As we stand on the windswept plains of Nabta Playa, surrounded by the ancient stones, we are reminded that even in the desolation of the desert, there are mysteries that continue to captivate us. The purpose of Nabta Playa remains hidden, its secrets locked within the stones, waiting for someone, someday, to unlock them. The more we study this ancient site, the more questions emerge, suggesting that there is still so much we don't understand about the early people of the desert and their relationship with the stars. What knowledge was contained in those stones? What story do they still have to tell? And what other mysteries might be hidden beneath the sand, waiting for the right moment to be revealed? As we continue our journey through the ancient world, we arrive at a question that has haunted historians, archaeologists, and engineers alike for centuries. How did early humans manage to build massive megalithic structures, some weighing hundreds of tons, without the advanced tools and technology that we take for granted today? From the towering stone circles of Stonehenge in Britain to the colossal statues of Easter Island, the ancient world is dotted with mysterious monuments that continue to defy our understanding. Take, for example, the megalithic site of Baalbek in modern-day Lebanon. Here, the largest stones ever quarried and moved by humans still stand, some weighing an astonishing 800 tons, each far surpassing anything we are capable of handling with modern cranes. The mystery deepens when you consider that these stones were cut, transported, and placed in intricate arrangements with only primitive tools, such as stone hammers, wooden sledges, and ropes. How was this possible? How did people who lived thousands of years ago, long before the advent of the wheel, metal tools, or even the wheelbarrow, manage such feats of engineering? To put it into perspective, a stone at Baalbek weighs more than 20 modern automobiles combined. The idea that early humans could have lifted such stones using only rudimentary tools seems almost impossible. And yet, evidence from across the globe suggests that this was not an isolated occurrence. The Great Pyramids of Giza, the stone circles at Stonehenge, The megalithic temples of Malta. These are just a few examples of structures that required precise planning, immense manpower, and ingenious methods to construct. The conventional explanation for how ancient builders achieved these feats involves the use of simple but effective methods: rolling, levering, and dragging. Large stones, some of which were quarried far from their final destinations, would be moved along the ground using logs as rollers or dragged across the earth using sledges. Teams of workers, coordinated and skilled, could have used ropes to move the stones over long distances, while a series of ramps and levers helped lift the stones into place. But these methods, though plausible, raise further questions. For one, how did ancient workers manage to transport stones over such vast distances? For example, the stones of Stonehenge are believed to have been transported from quarries that were 20 miles away. The quarries at Baalbek are even farther. Some of the largest stones there may have been moved from a quarry more than 500 meters away. Given that these stones could weigh as much as 800 tons, how did early humans manage to move such massive weights without the advanced machinery that we would need today? One theory suggests that a combination of manpower, innovation, and ingenuity played a significant role. Ancient engineers likely designed specialized tools and techniques to move and lift the stones, drawing on their deep understanding of basic physics. There is evidence that the people who built these structures understood how to manipulate simple machines like levers, ramps, and pulleys, using them in ways that made the impossible seem possible. This might explain how they managed to lift such massive stones into place, albeit with great effort and over long periods of time. Yet even with this understanding, the sheer scale of some of these projects leaves us in awe. Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure that consists of over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 30 tons. How did the builders, living around 4,500 years ago, manage to stack these massive blocks to a height of 480 feet, 147 meters, using only copper tools and primitive scaffolding? Some researchers believe the pyramid was built using a series of ramps, either straight, zigzagging, or spiral, leading up the face of the structure as it rose. The blocks would have been hauled up the ramps with manpower, possibly aided by a system of counterweights or rollers. But these methods don't fully explain how such a grand design could have been executed with such precision. Each side of the pyramid is aligned nearly perfectly with the cardinal points, and the structure's proportions suggest a sophisticated understanding of geometry and astronomy. How did the ancient Egyptians, with no written plans, manage to achieve this remarkable accuracy in construction? Could they have had knowledge of techniques and tools that have since been lost to history? And then there are the Easter Island statues, known as moai. These massive stone statues, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing up to 75 tons, were carved from volcanic tuff, a soft stone, on the island itself. The real mystery, however, lies not in how the moai were carved, but in how they were transported across the island. There are no wheels, no draft animals, and no large cranes, yet the statues were moved from their quarries to the island's ceremonial platforms, some over a mile away. The commonly accepted theory is that the statues were walked to their destinations, by rocking them back and forth with ropes, a method that would have required great skill, precision, and coordination. But this theory is still debated, and many questions remain. Could the transportation method have been more advanced than we assume? Or was it some method of movement we have yet to rediscover? For many, the mystery lies in the question of why. Why did these ancient civilizations invest such time, effort, and resources in constructing these enormous stone structures? What motivated them to move such immense weights, often across treacherous terrain and over great distances? The construction of megalithic structures was not just a technical achievement. It also involved an intricate network of labor, resources, and organization. These projects were not simply monuments. They were expressions of the builders' culture, religion, and identity. The pyramids, the moai, the megalithic stone circles, these were all monumental acts of dedication and belief, as much about spirituality and symbolism as they were about engineering. Some alternative theories suggest that ancient peoples may have used a form of lost technology, possibly harnessing sound, vibration, or other energies that modern science has yet to fully understand. Could there have been a sophisticated understanding of the natural world that was lost to history, a knowledge of sound frequencies or electromagnetic forces that allowed them to manipulate heavy stones with ease? It's a provocative theory, but one that remains speculative, without physical evidence to support it. There is also the possibility that we are simply underestimating the ingenuity of early humans. Could the methods we assume were available to ancient builders, such as primitive cranes or ramps, have been used in more creative and effective ways than we give them credit for? Some researchers believe that ancient civilizations possessed a much deeper understanding of geometry, physics, and material science than we have given them credit for. Could this advanced knowledge have allowed them to develop techniques for lifting and moving stones that we simply haven't rediscovered? As we reflect on these questions, we find ourselves marveling at the enduring mystery of the megaliths. Were they built by ancient people using a combination of simple tools and extraordinary ingenuity, or did they possess a knowledge of the natural world that we are only beginning to understand? We may never know for sure, but as we stand before these colossal structures, whether in Egypt, Easter Island, or Britain, we are reminded that human creativity, resourcefulness, and determination can sometimes defy the limits of what we think is possible. In the end, the mystery remains, and perhaps that is part of the allure. How did they do it? And what might still be hidden beneath the sands of time, waiting to be discovered? As we journey deeper into the mists of ancient history, one of the most enigmatic periods we encounter is the era of Predynastic Egypt, a time long before the famous pharaohs, pyramids, and monuments that would later define Egyptian civilization. The beliefs and practices of the people who lived in this formative period are a mystery that continues to captivate scholars. Long before the great unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single ruler, and before the construction of the first monumental tombs and temples, there was a society whose religious and spiritual foundations would lay the groundwork for one of the most enduring civilizations in history. But how did the early Egyptians, with little to no written records, develop the complex pantheon of gods and practices that would come to define the country for millennia? The desert landscapes of Egypt are vast and harsh, yet nestled along the narrow strip of fertile land that follows the banks of the Nile, early human settlements began to take shape. It is here, in the pre-dynastic era, around 5000 BC to 3100 BC, that we first see the emergence of religious symbols, rituals, and deities that seem to presage the more formalized beliefs of later dynastic Egypt. In the Nile Valley, archaeological sites like Hierakonpolis and Nabta offer a glimpse into the spiritual life of early Egyptian society. These sites have yielded some of the earliest evidence of religious belief, including sacred animal figurines, pottery decorated with images of gods and mythological creatures, and burial practices that suggest an evolving belief in the afterlife. Yet, despite the wealth of artifacts, much of the spiritual landscape of pre-dynastic Egypt remains obscure. The question is, how did these early peoples form the beliefs that would later give rise to the elaborate pantheon of gods? Gods such as Ra, Osiris, and Isis, whose influence would span millennia? One of the most striking features of pre-dynastic Egyptian religion is the presence of symbolic motifs that are later adopted and adapted by dynastic Egypt. For example, the serpent, a symbol of chaos and power, appears frequently in early Egyptian art. Serpents were associated with the goddess Wadjet, the protector of Lower Egypt, and her counterpart, Nekhbet, the vulture goddess of Upper Egypt. These early symbols would later evolve into the more complex divine figures seen in later periods, yet their origins remain unclear. What cultural, spiritual, or even psychological forces led the ancient Egyptians to choose such symbols, and how did these creatures come to represent key cosmic principles? In the Nabta culture, one of the most influential of the pre-dynastic societies, we find evidence of elaborate tombs containing personal possessions, as well as depictions of animal deities. These early tombs, often richly adorned with scenes of daily life, battle, and religious iconography, suggest that the Egyptians were beginning to associate death with an afterlife, an idea that would later become central to Egyptian religion. Yet, the nature of the afterlife during this time is still uncertain. Did the early Egyptians believe in a simple continuation of life, or did they envision a complex journey through various realms and trials, as we later see in the Book of the Dead? The evidence is scarce, but the motifs and symbols found in these tombs point to a belief in the power of gods and spirits, guiding the deceased toward a better existence. This leads us to the mystery of dualism, a theme that would become pervasive in later Egyptian religion. The duality between Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolized by the contrasting gods Wadjet and Nekbet, is evident even in the pre-dynastic period. This division between two opposing forces, chaos and order, life and death, the earth and the sky, was central to Egyptian thought and would later influence the conception of the world and the gods themselves. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under the first pharaoh, Narmer, around 3100 BC, solidified this dualistic worldview. Yet, the spiritual and cultural forces that gave rise to this division remain shrouded in mystery. How did the early Egyptians come to view their world in such dualistic terms? Was it a reflection of the land they inhabited, a strip of fertile ground surrounded by desert? Or was it a more universal innate understanding of balance and opposition? As we delve deeper into the rituals and practices of this time, we begin to encounter the symbols of early Egyptian kingship. The scorpion king and the bull, both symbols of power and fertility, appear frequently in pre-dynastic artifacts. These early kings were seen as both protectors and intermediaries between the gods and their people. Yet, unlike the later, more centralized rule of the pharaohs, these early kingship practices seem to have been more decentralized, with various regional rulers vying for dominance. Could the rise of these powerful symbols, those of kingship, divinity, and the afterlife, have been a response to the early Egyptians' understanding of death and their desire for a connection to the divine? One of the most curious aspects of the pre-dynastic period is the absence of written records. The Egyptians, whose hieroglyphic script would later become one of the most famous writing systems in history, left no substantial written evidence from this time. Instead, they relied on visual storytelling, images painted on pottery, etched into stone, or sculpted in reliefs. These depictions are often rich in symbolism, but are open to interpretation. Some scholars suggest that these images were not merely decorative, but were meant to represent a kind of proto-script, a symbolic language that communicated complex ideas about religion, power, and the cosmos. Yet, without a written record, the true meaning of these images remains elusive. What messages were these early Egyptians trying to convey? Were they trying to communicate with the gods, or were they marking significant events, rituals, or changes in their understanding of the universe? As we look at the development of Egyptian religious beliefs, we see an evolutionary path that would culminate in the grand theology of dynastic Egypt, one that included gods of the earth, sky, and underworld, each with their own complex myths and interwoven relationships. But how did this belief system come to be? How did the pre-dynastic Egyptians transition from rudimentary religious symbols to a fully realized pantheon of gods that could explain the natural world, the cycles of life and death, and the human condition? One possible explanation is that these early beliefs were influenced by the changing environment of Egypt itself. The cyclical flooding of the Nile, which brought life-giving water to the land, may have led the early Egyptians to develop a deep reverence for natural forces. They may have seen the gods as embodying these forces, gods of water, of fertility, of the harvest, and of the sky. But did these gods evolve in isolation, or was there contact with other early civilizations, whether across the desert to the east or along the Mediterranean to the north? Some scholars have speculated that the early Egyptians may have been influenced by nearby cultures, such as the Mesopotamians or the Nubians, who had their own systems of gods and cosmologies. Could the religious ideas of Predynastic Egypt have been shaped, in part, by these interactions? The origins of Predynastic Egypt's beliefs remain a tantalizing mystery. The symbols, rituals, and deities of this early period offer only fleeting glimpses into the spiritual life of a people who would go on to build one of the most powerful and enduring civilizations in history. But the question still lingers. What gave rise to their complex pantheon, and how did they come to view the world in such profound and symbolic ways? As we continue to explore the mysteries of ancient Egypt, we are reminded that there is so much more to uncover, waiting beneath the sands and stone. What other secrets lie buried in the tombs and temples, hidden in the symbols and images of these early Egyptians? And how much of their wisdom and belief system still eludes us, lost to the sands of time? As we continue to explore the fascinating and sometimes unsettling mysteries of the ancient world, we encounter a practice that has puzzled archaeologists and anthropologists for centuries: skull elongation. This curious and, in some cases, disturbing practice involved intentionally altering the shape of the human skull, a procedure that was performed by various ancient cultures across the globe. From the remote highlands of Peru to the heart of Central Asia, the evidence for skull elongation is widespread. But what drove these cultures to intentionally modify their bodies in such a profound way? What purpose did this practice serve, and what did it mean to those who practiced it? Imagine walking through a dark, humid jungle, or perhaps across a wide, dusty plateau. You are surrounded by ancient tombs, scattered ruins, and faded remnants of long-forgotten civilizations. Here, in these forgotten places, the remains of human beings, whose skulls have been deliberately reshaped, lay quietly beneath the earth. In the cold, sterile light of a museum or laboratory, the skeletal remains are carefully examined, their elongated skulls a striking contrast to the natural human form. The question lingers: why would anyone go to such lengths to alter the shape of their skull? The practice of skull elongation, known as cranial deformation, is not confined to one specific culture or region. Evidence of this practice dates back thousands of years, with the oldest examples found in ancient Sumer, modern-day Iraq, and Mesoamerica, modern-day Mexico and Central America. The practice is most often seen in the New World, with the Nazca people of Peru, the Maya civilization, and the Toltec cultures all showing signs of cranial modification. But this was not limited to the Americas. In Asia, especially in regions like Mongolia and Kazakhstan, the practice of skull elongation has been found in ancient burial sites. Even in ancient Egypt, evidence of skull modification has been discovered, suggesting that the practice was far more widespread than we initially imagined. The method of elongation typically involved applying pressure to the skull during the formative years of a child's life. Infants, whose skulls were still soft and malleable, would have wooden boards, cloth, or other tools wrapped around their heads. Over time, this pressure would shape the skull into a more elongated or flattened form, depending on the specific technique used. The results could be dramatic: heads elongated at the forehead or back, creating an unmistakable shape that was radically different from the natural human skull. These modifications were not accidental. They were intentional, and in many cases, they seem to have been done for reasons that are still not fully understood. One of the most intriguing questions surrounding skull elongation is why such a practice was so widespread. What drove ancient cultures to alter the shape of their skulls in this way? One of the most common explanations is that it was a symbol of status and identity. In many societies, physical differences were used to mark social distinctions, and an elongated skull may have been seen as a sign of elite status, nobility, or divine connection. Among the Maya and the Inca, for example, the elite classes often engaged in cranial deformation, suggesting that this was a way to visually distinguish the powerful from the common people. The elongated skulls of rulers and priests may have been intended to emphasize their superiority, or perhaps their perceived connection to the gods. In other cultures, the practice was linked to religious or spiritual beliefs. Some researchers believe that elongated skulls were seen as a reflection of a spiritual or cosmic alignment, with the elongated form symbolizing a connection to the divine or to higher realms. The Nazca people of Peru, for instance, are known to have practiced cranial deformation, and some scholars speculate that it was part of an effort to make individuals appear more godlike. In these societies, where gods and ancestors were thought to possess great power, shaping the human body to resemble the divine might have been a means of invoking supernatural forces or communicating with the gods. Additionally, there are theories that suggest cranial deformation may have been associated with intellectual or physical superiority. It is possible that ancient cultures believed that elongated skulls were an indicator of higher intelligence or more sophisticated mental abilities. This theory is supported by the fact that some of the cultures that practiced cranial deformation were known for their advanced knowledge in fields like astronomy, mathematics, and engineering. Could the elongated skull be an attempt to show that the individual was intellectually superior, or perhaps even part of a unique group with special knowledge or abilities? But while these explanations make sense in the context of the societies that practiced skull elongation, there are still many questions that remain unanswered. One of the most pressing questions is whether cranial deformation had any practical effects on the brain or intelligence of the individual. Could the shape of the skull actually have had an impact on cognitive abilities, or was it purely a symbolic practice? There is no concrete evidence to suggest that cranial deformation improved intelligence or mental capacity, but the idea that it was believed to have some kind of influence on a person's mind or connection to the divine remains an open question. Another mystery surrounding the practice of skull elongation is the extent to which it was shared across cultures. Did all of these societies independently come up with the idea of skull modification? Or was there a shared cultural exchange that led to the spread of this practice? Some archaeologists believe that the practice of cranial deformation could have been a part of a larger cultural or religious network that spanned the ancient world. The idea that this practice was not an isolated phenomenon, but rather part of a broader, interconnected belief system is a tantalizing possibility. Were these societies aware of each other's practices? And did they influence each other's beliefs and rituals, passing down the tradition of skull elongation as a means of connecting to something greater than themselves? In addition to the known examples of skull elongation, there are also fringe theories that attempt to explain the phenomenon. Some claim that the elongated skulls represent evidence of ancient extraterrestrial contact, suggesting that these physical modifications were meant to resemble the heads of non-human visitors or gods. Though such theories remain speculative and highly controversial, they underscore the awe and wonder that these strange skulls inspire. Could the elongated skulls be an attempt to emulate beings from beyond the stars? Or is this simply an example of ancient cultures using physical features to symbolize something more spiritual? Despite all the theories and explanations, there is still much we do not understand about the practice of skull elongation. Its purpose, its meaning, and its widespread use remain elusive. Did these societies truly believe that shaping their skulls would elevate their connection to the divine, or were they simply trying to distinguish themselves from others? Were these practices intended to symbolize something about the individual's role in society, or were they designed to mark a person as extraordinary in some other way? As we continue to uncover new evidence about this ancient practice, whether through the examination of ancient burial sites, new technologies, or the discovery of previously unknown cultures, we are left to wonder how much of this mystery is still hidden beneath the surface. What more might we learn about the people who shaped their skulls so intentionally? And how might this shape our understanding of human identity, status, and belief in the distant past? The skulls of the past remain silent, but they speak to us in other ways, through their form, through the questions they raise, and through the mystery they still hold. Perhaps in time, we will unravel the full purpose of this ancient practice, but until then, we can only look to the strange and elongated skulls of the past and wonder what secrets they still guard. As we continue our journey through the annals of human history, we encounter a truly puzzling enigma: the existence of early long-distance trade networks, vast, intricate systems of exchange between distant civilizations, whose organization remains a mystery. These networks, which spanned continents and brought together cultures with little or no direct contact, defy our conventional understanding of ancient economies and communication. Consider the beads of carnelian that have been found in Mesopotamia, or the ivory from Africa that shows up in the Indus Valley. These small objects, seemingly mundane to the casual observer, are clues to a vast, interwoven trade network that connected ancient cultures across what we now call the Middle East, South Asia, and North Africa, long before the time of written history, and before the rise of monumental empires like those of Egypt or Babylon. The materials themselves are exotic to their finders, hinting at a complex and organized system that spanned vast distances, and, most perplexing of all, existed without the logistical frameworks that we might expect. There were no large caravans or organized fleets of ships in the traditional sense, at least not as we understand them today. How, then, did these early civilizations come to form such sophisticated trading networks? How did they transport goods over vast distances without the infrastructure we typically associate with long-distance trade, without the wheel, without horses, without large merchant vessels? These are questions that have baffled archaeologists and historians for decades. And while some answers exist, many aspects of this trade remain clouded in uncertainty and mystery. Let us take a moment to imagine one of these ancient trade routes. Picture yourself in the bustling streets of a city like Ur, the ancient Sumerian metropolis located in the heart of Mesopotamia. You walk past the great ziggurat, the towering temple dedicated to the moon god, and the smell of incense and spices fills the air. Among the crowd, you notice merchants from distant lands, offering items from far-off places: lapis lazuli from the Hindu Kush mountains, tin from the Caucasus, and gold from the Nubian deserts. Each object has traveled hundreds, sometimes thousands, of miles to reach this point. And yet, these items arrive at the marketplaces of Mesopotamia without the large caravans or merchant fleets one might expect. Instead, small groups of traders, perhaps even individuals, move goods over these immense distances, through challenging deserts, across towering mountains, and along great rivers. The origins of these early trade routes remain a mystery in many ways. Archaeologists have long known that Mesopotamian, Indus Valley, and Egyptian civilizations were interconnected, but the full scale and organization of these networks are still debated. How were these goods moved? How did traders find each other across such vast distances? These questions become even more intriguing when we consider the nature of the items that were traded: luxury goods, often associated with the elite or the sacred, rather than everyday necessities. The Mesopotamians, for example, traded not only in raw materials, but in cultural artifacts, including cylinder seals and pottery, which suggests an exchange not only of goods, but also of ideas, artistic practices, and religious symbols. This gives rise to the theory that these trade routes may have been more than just a simple exchange of resources. They may have been channels of cultural diffusion, allowing ideas to spread across great distances long before the advent of written language. Some researchers propose that the goods we find in places like Sumer and Harappa could have traveled along established river routes, such as the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, or the Indus River in South Asia. The rivers provided relatively easy transportation of bulk goods, but for luxury items like lapis lazuli, amber, or precious metals, the routes may have been more direct, with specialized traders making long, arduous journeys across hostile terrain. These traders, often working alone or in small groups, would have used a combination of knowledge, fortitude, and possibly even early navigation techniques to find their way. It's also worth considering the possibility that these ancient networks were linked not by formal trade organizations or political empires, but by personal connections, families, tribes, or even religious groups who had established connections across vast distances. Could it be that the early trade routes were shaped by shared beliefs and rituals, with religious centers serving as focal points for the exchange of goods, ideas, and culture? The ancient city of Babylon, for example, was not just a commercial hub, but also a place where religious rituals and ceremonies played a central role in daily life. Perhaps these sacred sites acted as melting pots for distant peoples, with traders from different regions coming together to exchange not only material goods but also spiritual knowledge. This idea of spiritual exchange brings us to a more speculative theory. Could it be that these early long-distance trade networks were not purely about economic gain, but also about spreading knowledge of the divine? Some scholars suggest that certain ritualistic objects, like the elaborate bronze vessels and sacred idols found across different cultures, were not merely for worship, but also for trade. They may have served as a kind of currency in the exchange of ideas, philosophies, and even esoteric knowledge. In this way, trade could have acted as a bridge between cultures, not just for acquiring resources, but for the transmission of religious and metaphysical knowledge. But even with all these possible explanations, the scale and complexity of these trade networks raise additional questions. How were these goods actually acquired, and who were the first intermediaries between the distant regions? Were there larger unknown civilizations in places like the Arabian Peninsula, the Saharan Desert, or the Indus Valley, whose roles in these trade networks remain hidden beneath the sands of time? Evidence of such civilizations is scant, but the sheer volume and diversity of traded goods suggest that there were larger, more interconnected networks than we currently understand. Did these cultures leave behind traces of their existence, ruins, inscriptions, or artifacts that we have yet to uncover? The ancient Mediterranean, with its powerful Phoenician traders, has long been seen as a major hub of early trade. However, the true extent of these networks is still unclear. How far did they reach, and who were the players? Some archaeologists believe that the Phoenicians may have been part of an even older, more complex system that predated their empire. These ancient mariners were known for their seafaring skills, but it remains a mystery how they managed to reach far-flung places such as Britain or sub-Saharan Africa, areas with which they traded goods like tin and ivory. What routes did they take, and who were their counterparts in these distant lands? As we continue to piece together this vast puzzle, we are left with more questions than answers. The organization of early long-distance trade networks, their driving forces, and their true reach remain shrouded in mystery. Were these trade routes born out of necessity, or were they part of a larger, more intricate web of relationships that spanned continents and connected cultures in ways we cannot yet comprehend? It is tempting to imagine that these ancient trade networks were a precursor to the modern world's global economy, an early reflection of human ingenuity, connection, and the desire for exchange. And yet, the more we learn, the more it seems that there are still great unknowns hidden beneath the surface. long-distance routes that we have yet to uncover, forgotten civilizations, whose roles in these exchanges remain enigmatic. Perhaps one day, new evidence will come to light that will finally reveal the full extent of these ancient networks. Until then, the mystery remains, inviting us to look deeper into the past and ask, what might we still be missing? As we continue our exploration of the ancient world, we come to one of the most intriguing and perplexing phenomena in early human history: the sudden rise of large settlements in Mesopotamia. This dramatic shift, which occurred around 6,000 years ago, marks a pivotal moment in the development of human civilization. But despite centuries of research, archaeologists and historians still struggle to fully explain why these settlements emerged so abruptly, and how early human societies managed to organize themselves on such a grand scale. Imagine standing on the banks of the Tigris or Euphrates rivers, the lifeblood of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. In the distance, the sun sets over the massive, sprawling city of Ur, one of the first true urban centers in human history. Towering mud-brick walls protect the city from the surrounding wilderness, while an intricate web of narrow streets winds through the settlement, teeming with activity. Merchants hawk their wares, traders from distant lands unload their precious goods, and priests prepare for rituals at the towering ziggurat, the enormous stepped pyramid that symbolizes the city's religious and political power. But how did this bustling metropolis come to be? How did people living in small, scattered villages suddenly come together to build such an advanced society, complete with monumental architecture, complex social structures, and intricate systems of writing and trade? The sudden emergence of these large settlements in Mesopotamia around 4000 BC remains one of the great mysteries of early human history. Before the rise of cities like Ur and Babylon, human societies were relatively small and scattered. For thousands of years, people lived in small, mobile groups, relying on hunting, gathering, and simple farming to survive. They built temporary dwellings and moved frequently, following seasonal patterns and the natural flow of resources. But then, as if from nowhere, the pace of human settlement began to accelerate. Large, permanent settlements began to appear, and with them, a transformation in the way people lived, worked, and interacted with one another. The first signs of these shifts can be seen in the archaeological record, where massive construction projects begin to appear almost overnight. In Tel Abu Huraya, in northern Syria, archaeologists have discovered the remains of a settlement that dates back to around 10,000 BC. Here, small groups of people began experimenting with farming, but it wasn't until much later, around 4000 BC, that settlements began to grow exponentially in size. In Sumer, the southern region of Mesopotamia, monumental structures like the ziggurat of Ur would soon dominate the landscape, signaling the emergence of a powerful, centralized civilization. The speed and scale of these developments raises important questions. How did these ancient people manage to organize themselves so quickly? What spurred this sudden burst of architectural, social, and technological innovation? Mainstream explanations suggest that it was the gradual development of agriculture, particularly the domestication of cereal grains, that allowed for more permanent settlement. With the ability to grow crops in one place, people could build larger communities that didn't have to move constantly in search of food. This idea is compelling, but it only raises more questions. Why, after thousands of years of semi-nomadic existence, did people suddenly make this transition? What changed in the environment or the social structure to catalyze this shift? The answer, some believe, may lie in the geography and climate of the region. Mesopotamia, located between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, is a land of both plenty and peril. The rivers provided abundant water for irrigation, allowing farmers to grow large quantities of grain. But they also posed a threat. The rivers would often flood, destroying crops and displacing entire communities. Could it be that the people of Mesopotamia were responding to these environmental pressures by banding together to form larger, more organized settlements? Perhaps by working together, they could more effectively manage the resources of the land, control the flow of water, and protect themselves from the unpredictable floods. Yet even this explanation only scratches the surface. While agriculture may have played a key role, it does not account for the incredible complexity of these early cities. In Uruk, one of the first true cities in human history, there are signs of a highly stratified society with specialized labor. People did not just farm. They also built monumental architecture, created works of art, and wrote the world's first known texts. How were these cities organized? How did people go from simple farming villages to societies with complex religious, political, and economic systems? Some archaeologists believe that the rise of these early cities was linked to the development of religious structures, the ziggurats, temples, and shrines that became the focal points of Mesopotamian society. The priesthood may have played a central role in organizing the population, as temples acted not only as spiritual centers, but also as economic hubs. The management of resources, labor, and trade could have been controlled through these institutions, creating a kind of centralized authority that facilitated the growth of large settlements. The Sumerians were among the first to develop a form of writing, and it was largely used for record-keeping in these religious and economic centers. Could the religious elites have played a greater role in shaping these cities than we initially thought? But there is another layer to the mystery: the question of how these early civilizations communicated and organized such complex societies over vast distances. Mesopotamia was not a unified empire, but rather a patchwork of city-states, each with its own ruler and set of customs. Yet somehow, these city-states managed to establish trade networks that reached from Persia to the Levant, and even into the Indus Valley. The Sumerians, in particular, are known to have traded in precious metals, lapis lazuli, and other luxury goods, suggesting a level of sophistication and communication that seems far beyond what we would expect for such early societies. This leads us to the most speculative question of all. Could these settlements have had some kind of external influence, either through contact with other advanced civilizations or through an as-yet undiscovered form of knowledge transfer? The possibility of lost or unknown civilizations in the ancient world is one that continues to intrigue and inspire. Were these early Mesopotamian cities built upon the knowledge of an even earlier civilization that has left no trace behind? Or did these ancient people somehow tap into a kind of collective intelligence that allowed them to create monumental settlements almost overnight? Despite centuries of research, the rise of large settlements in Mesopotamia remains a fascinating mystery. What sparked this dramatic shift? Was it merely the advent of agriculture? Or was there something more at play, something deeper, perhaps even beyond what we can currently comprehend? Was it the need for survival in a harsh environment? Or was there a more profound social, religious, or cultural force driving this transformation? As we continue to unravel the story of early civilization, these questions persist, inviting us to look deeper into the past and wonder what might still be hidden, waiting to be discovered beneath the sands of time. Could there be more to the rise of these ancient cities than we can yet explain? Or are we still missing key pieces of the puzzle, waiting for the day when they will come to light and reveal the full scope of humanity's earliest achievements? As we trace the development of early human civilization, there's one phenomenon that continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians: the rapid abandonment of early settlements. These sudden disappearances, often occurring without clear explanation, are found across various cultures and time periods, but particularly in the ancient world. Whether in the bustling city-states of Mesopotamia or the more isolated regions of the Indus Valley, the abrupt desertion of flourishing settlements has raised deep questions that remain unanswered. Imagine standing amidst the ruins of an ancient settlement, a once thriving community now abandoned. Çatalhöyük, one of the earliest known urban centers, sprawls before you. The mud brick houses, some stacked on top of others, are silent and empty. Evidence of daily life, from art on the walls to tools and pottery scattered on the floors, suggests a vibrant and complex society. Yet, one day, the people simply left. There are no signs of war or conflict, no indication of a catastrophic disaster like an earthquake or flood. The settlement simply ceased to be. What happened? Why would an entire community, with its intricate social structures and established ways of life, suddenly decide to abandon everything they had built? This mystery is not confined to Çatalhöyük alone. Across the ancient world, archaeologists have discovered numerous settlements that were abruptly vacated, often leaving behind traces of daily life as though the people simply disappeared. The Indus Valley, once home to some of the most advanced urban centers of the ancient world, offers another example. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were once bustling metropolises with complex drainage systems, well-planned streets, and large brick structures. But around 1900 BC, these cities, along with many others in the region, were abruptly abandoned. The reasons for this disappearance remain a subject of intense debate. Was it environmental collapse? Was there a sudden migration? Or perhaps something even more mysterious? Similarly, in Mesopotamia, some of the earliest Sumerian cities show signs of rapid abandonment. Ur, one of the most significant cities of early Mesopotamia, was eventually deserted, leaving only its monumental ziggurat behind as a reminder of its past. This trend of desertion is not confined to a single area or time period, but appears repeatedly across different cultures and eras, suggesting that there is a common thread behind these mysterious vanishings. One of the most commonly suggested explanations for these sudden departures is environmental collapse. Early settlements, particularly those dependent on agriculture, were vulnerable to changes in climate or the degradation of the land. In the case of the Indus Valley Civilization, some researchers speculate that the region experienced a series of droughts that led to the collapse of the cities. The rivers Indus and Gagar Hakra that once nourished the civilization may have dried up, disrupting agriculture and making the region uninhabitable. Similarly, in Mesopotamia, the once fertile soil of the Tigris and Euphrates valleys became salinized over time, reducing its agricultural productivity and making it harder for settlements to sustain themselves. Could it be that these early societies faced an environmental crisis so severe that it led to a mass migration, with people leaving behind their homes and cities in search of more fertile land? If so, what does this say about the resilience or vulnerability of these early civilizations? How much of their downfall was driven by forces outside their control, like the unpredictable whims of nature, versus internal factors like political unrest or social upheaval? Yet, while environmental collapse is a compelling theory, it doesn't explain everything. Many of these abandoned settlements show no signs of environmental stress or degradation. At Çatalhöyük, for example, there are no signs of a major environmental catastrophe, nor is there evidence of warfare or other forms of violence. The city's abandonment appears to have been gradual, with the inhabitants simply moving on. Could the reasons behind the departure be social or cultural rather than environmental? One theory suggests that the rise of new social structures, beliefs, or technologies may have driven the abandonment of old settlements. Perhaps the people of Çatalhöyük or Mohenjo-Daro were not fleeing a disaster, but rather transitioning to new forms of settlement or lifestyle. It is possible that these societies, after reaching a certain threshold of complexity, underwent a profound shift in their social or religious structures, leading to a deliberate dispersal of populations. In the case of Çatalhöyük, some archaeologists have proposed that the city's inhabitants may have abandoned the settlement as part of a religious or ritualistic transformation. Perhaps the people felt the need to leave behind the old ways of life and establish new, more spiritual or ideologically cohesive communities. Similarly, the rise of new technologies or trading routes might have prompted people to leave behind old cities in favor of more prosperous or strategically positioned locations. Mohenjo-Daro, with its impressive urban planning, was likely a hub of trade, and it's possible that the people of the Indus Valley moved to more advantageous locations along newer trade routes, leading to the abandonment of their older cities. Could the movement of goods, ideas, or people have been a driving force behind these mass migrations? Still, other theories are more speculative, venturing into the realm of the unknown. Some have proposed that the abandonment of ancient cities could be linked to a phenomenon of collective memory, a sudden shared realization or event that led to mass departure. Could these ancient societies have experienced some kind of collective trauma or revelation that prompted the abandonment of their cities? This idea is less grounded in physical evidence, but raises intriguing questions about the psychological and cultural factors that might have influenced such dramatic shifts. Some even entertain the possibility of an unknown external force behind these disappearances. Could the settlements have been abandoned due to a sudden encounter with a foreign civilization or some kind of cataclysmic event? Perhaps an invasion or a natural disaster, such as a flood or a volcanic eruption, that we have yet to uncover evidence for? In the case of Mohenjo-Daro, there are theories that suggest the city could have been struck by a massive flood or even an earthquake, but the lack of clear evidence leaves this theory as one of many possibilities. What is particularly striking about these sudden abandonments is how swift and decisive they appear to have been. In some cases, there are no signs of gradual decline. The inhabitants simply left. Did they plan to return? Was it an exodus that took place over several generations, or was it more sudden, a mass evacuation triggered by some unknown event? And if the departure was planned, where did they go? Did they disperse to other settlements, or were entire populations lost to history? As we stand amidst the remnants of these ancient cities, we are left with more questions than answers. The reason for the rapid abandonment of these early settlements, whether due to environmental collapse, social transformation, or an external event, remains an open mystery. It is a puzzle that continues to fascinate, inviting us to ponder the complexities of early human societies and the forces that shaped their rise and fall. Was it the unpredictable nature of the environment that drove them to flee? Or was it the unforeseen evolution of their cultures? Could there have been another unknown factor, something hidden in the sands of time that we have yet to uncover? The mystery persists, calling us to dig deeper, not just into the ruins of these ancient cities, but into the very heart of early human civilization itself. What secrets remain buried, waiting to be discovered? What might still be hidden from view? And, perhaps most intriguingly, could the answers to these questions hold the key to understanding the future as much as the past? As we continue our journey through the unraveling mysteries of early human civilization, we come to a question that has long puzzled archaeologists and historians alike. Who were the elites or rulers that shaped the proto-cities of the ancient world? Standing at the foot of the ancient city of Uruk, a place often considered the world's first true city, we can only wonder who ruled this vast settlement, with its monumental architecture and intricate systems of governance. The walls of Uruk rise tall, weathered by time, yet still imposing. The great ziggurat, its stair-stepped structure rising toward the heavens, hints at the spiritual and political power that once resided here. But who was in charge? Who decided the fate of this burgeoning society and others like it? How did these early civilizations develop such complex urban structures without leaving behind concrete evidence of their rulers? Uruk, like many other ancient cities, gives us an incredible glimpse into the dawn of urban life, but also into the mystery of its leadership. What we know about these early cities is often fragmented, drawn from ancient texts, material culture, and the occasional artifact. Yet, many crucial details remain tantalizingly out of reach, particularly when it comes to understanding the individuals, or possibly the systems, who governed these proto-cities. The Sumerians, who founded Uruk and other city-states in southern Mesopotamia, left behind the earliest forms of writing and a legacy of monumental achievements. From the monumental ziggurats to the invention of the wheel, the Sumerians clearly understood how to organize labor and resources on an unprecedented scale. But the people at the top of this social hierarchy, the elites who orchestrated these transformations, remain largely shrouded in mystery. In ancient Sumer, it is likely that religious elites played a central role in governance. The high priests of the great temples of Uruk, for example, may have wielded power alongside secular rulers. The ancient text of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which comes from this very region, tells us of a powerful king who was also a semi-divine figure, closely tied to the gods. But was Gilgamesh truly the kind of ruler his epic suggests? Or was he merely one of many who governed through a deeply interconnected system of religious and political power? Despite the allure of such legendary figures, the identity and nature of the early rulers remain speculative. Historians have long wondered whether these leaders were indeed individual kings or part of a more collective system of governance. In many early cities, the lines between religion and politics were blurred. The rulers were often seen as divine or as chosen intermediaries between the gods and the people. The priests and temple administrators may have held as much, if not more, power than the secular rulers themselves. But who were these figures, and how did they rise to power? The answer, unfortunately, is elusive. In many cases, the early elites of these proto-cities are not easily identified in the archaeological record. While monumental temples and tombs have been discovered, often with rich offerings and sacrifices, there is a lack of personal inscriptions or clear evidence pointing to specific rulers. Take Ur, for instance. Its royal tombs, discovered in the 1920s, contained an astonishing wealth of artifacts: gold, jewelry, weapons, and elaborate ceremonial items. But while these tombs indicate the presence of wealthy elites, there is little information about the identities of those buried there. Who were these powerful individuals, and how did they influence the rise of Ur as one of the earliest centers of civilization? One of the most intriguing and enigmatic examples of this lack of clarity is the city of Tel Brak in modern-day Syria. Excavations here have revealed a fascinating mound of ruins that dates back to around 3500 BC, during a period known as the Proto-Uruk period. The site contains evidence of a large, prosperous city, complete with public buildings and evidence of long-distance trade. However, despite the city's scale and complexity, archaeologists have struggled to identify any clear ruler or ruling class. Some have speculated that Tel Brak may have been governed by an elite collective, perhaps a group of individuals rather than a single dominant ruler. This theory is particularly compelling because it challenges the conventional view of a single powerful figure at the top of the social pyramid, instead suggesting a more egalitarian or oligarchic system. But if this was the case, why is there such a lack of identifiable elite figures in the material record? Could the rulers of these proto-cities have been so thoroughly integrated into their societies that they left no visible traces of their power? In a time when religious rituals, trade, and community building played such a central role in daily life, could the elites have been more abstract or collective in their leadership styles, blending in with the general populace? It's possible that the idea of a singular king was not a concept these early civilizations recognized, at least not in the way we understand it today. There are other, even more speculative theories, some of which venture into the realm of ancient lost knowledge or extraterrestrial influence. Could these early city-states have been guided by unknown forces, or perhaps by knowledge lost to time, knowledge that helped them build such complex systems of governance without leaving any clear evidence of their leaders. Some have suggested that these proto-cities might have been influenced by lost civilizations or cultures that predate even the Sumerians, leaving behind a legacy that was adopted and adapted by later societies. Could there be an ancient source of knowledge that has been erased or hidden by time? An ancient blueprint for governance that modern archaeologists have yet to uncover? One of the most enduring mysteries in this context is the role of women in early Mesopotamian societies, which, despite being described in the context of highly patriarchal systems, might have had women in powerful leadership roles. The goddess Inanna, associated with the city of Uruk, was one of the most important deities in the Sumerian pantheon, and her myth tells of her journey to the underworld, where she confronts death and emerges more powerful than before. This suggests a symbolic link between female authority and the very forces of creation and destruction. Were women part of the elite ruling class in ways that we don't yet fully understand? The absence of clear historical records makes it difficult to confirm, but it's certainly a possibility worth exploring further. Despite the various attempts to uncover the nature of these early elites, there remains a vast gap in our understanding. Were these proto-cities truly ruled by individuals, or were they governed through collective leadership? Was power tied to the control of religion, trade, or military force? Could these early elites have been so deeply integrated into the fabric of society that their rule remained invisible, overshadowed by the collective identity of the city-state? And, most intriguingly, might the answers to these questions reveal something deeper about the nature of leadership, society, and power in the ancient world, something that we have yet to fully comprehend? The mystery of the unknown elites of these proto-cities continues to invite speculation and study. Each discovery, each new excavation, raises new questions and fuels our curiosity. Perhaps, one day, we will uncover the identities of these early rulers and understand how they governed the first cities in human history. Until then, the story of these enigmatic figures remains one of the most captivating and unresolved mysteries of the ancient world. And as we search for answers, we must ask ourselves, what other secrets might lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered beneath the sands of time? As we shift our focus to one of the most fascinating and enigmatic archaeological sites in the world, we are confronted with yet another layer of mystery that still eludes complete understanding: the animal symbolism at Göbekli Tepe. Tucked away in the remote hills of southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe has long been recognized as an extraordinary site, a sprawling ceremonial complex that predates the advent of agriculture by thousands of years, dating back to around 9,600 BC. Its massive stone pillars, intricately carved with a dizzying array of motifs and symbols, stand as a testament to the ingenuity and religious fervor of the people who created it. But as captivating as the site's sheer scale and architectural sophistication are, what truly deepens the mystery is the recurring presence of animals in the carvings. The site itself is nothing short of breathtaking. Picture, if you will, walking through the site's excavation areas, where towering stone pillars rise from the earth like ancient sentinels. These megaliths, many weighing several tons, are adorned with detailed carvings of animals, some instantly recognizable, others more obscure and difficult to identify. These animals are not depicted simply as representations of the natural world, but are often shown in complex symbolic ways. Snakes, lions, scorpions, birds, boars, and even what appear to be fantastical creatures populate the stone surfaces, suggesting that animals held a profound significance for the builders of Göbekli Tepe. What makes these animal carvings particularly intriguing is their context. At first glance, one might assume they are merely decorative or reflective of the day-to-day lives of the people who lived at Göbekli Tepe. However, the more scholars examine the symbolism, the more they begin to realize that these images are part of a far deeper narrative, one that touches on the spiritual, ritualistic, and perhaps even mythological beliefs of the people who built this mysterious site. But what exactly were these ancient people trying to convey through their representations of animals? And why did they choose to carve such vivid and sometimes haunting images into massive stone pillars, some of which were buried intentionally long after their creation? The animals at Göbekli Tepe are often interpreted as totemic figures, representing both the real and symbolic relationships between humans and animals. Many scholars have suggested that these animals may have been viewed as spiritual guides or sacred entities that connected the physical and spiritual worlds. In this sense, the carvings could have represented a form of ancient shamanistic or animistic belief, where animals were seen as embodiments of divine power or guardians of certain sacred spaces. The presence of boars and wild cattle, for example, might suggest themes of fertility and abundance, while birds of prey or lions could be associated with power, hunting, and the divine forces that governed life and death. Some of the more abstract and difficult to interpret animals found at Göbekli Tepe, such as the scorpion or what appears to be a mythical beast, add another layer of mystery to the site. Could these creatures have represented deities or spirits that existed beyond the physical realm, with the carvings serving as a means to invoke their presence or seek their favor? The supernatural and the symbolic appear to be deeply interwoven in the artistry at Göbekli Tepe, leaving us to wonder, was this site built as a ritualistic sanctuary, where the boundaries between the human world and the animal or spirit world were blurred? Or was it something even more complex, perhaps a place of sacred knowledge, where the rites of passage, social order, and the mysteries of the universe were explored through symbolic acts? As researchers dig deeper into the significance of these animal symbols, new questions continue to arise. What did these animals represent to the people of Göbekli Tepe in a practical sense? Were they simply symbolic representations, or did the people who built the site have direct interactions with these animals in their daily lives, perhaps as part of early rituals or ceremonies? It's worth noting that the carvings of animals on the pillars are often situated in enclosed, sacred spaces, suggesting that these creatures were seen not just as symbols but as integral to the very fabric of the spiritual life of the community. The sheer prominence of the animals implies that they were woven into the very ritualistic foundation of the society. But even more baffling than the specific animals themselves is the question of why they were chosen in the first place. Göbekli Tepe, with its monumental size and intricate carvings, must have required vast amounts of resources and labor. Was it truly the work of a single, powerful leader, or a community-wide effort driven by shared beliefs and rituals? Could the selection of these animals have been tied to a broader cosmological vision, where the symbolic creatures represented key elements of the world: life, death, the cycle of the seasons, and the divine forces governing them? Furthermore, there is the issue of why Göbekli Tepe was abandoned and intentionally buried after centuries of use. The site's burial is as much of a mystery as the carvings themselves. Why were these massive stone structures, with their intricate carvings and symbolic representations, buried with such care? Was it an act of reverence? Or was it a response to some kind of societal or religious shift, a way to seal away a sacred knowledge that no longer served the needs of the people? Could the abandonment of the site be connected to a dramatic shift in belief systems or political power? Or was there some more external force, like the changing climate or environmental collapse, that led to the desertion of this remarkable place? The animal carvings at Göbekli Tepe continue to resist simple explanations. Were these creatures simply totems of everyday life, or did they represent something more profound, rituals, spiritual beliefs, or even a now-forgotten cosmology? Some researchers suggest the animals could have served as a form of early writing, a pictorial language through which people conveyed abstract ideas about their world, their gods, and the forces that shaped their lives. If so, Could we one day decipher this ancient alphabet, unlocking deeper insights into the worldview of the people who created Göbekli Tepe? And perhaps the most profound question of all, what else remains hidden beneath the earth at Göbekli Tepe? Despite the incredible discoveries already made, the site is far from fully excavated. What might future excavations reveal? Could we one day uncover even more animal carvings, more clues that point toward a lost belief system, or perhaps an entirely new form of ancient ritual that we have yet to imagine? Göbekli Tepe, with its animal symbolism and its hidden secrets, stands as a testament to the mysteries of the ancient world, and to the enduring questions about the relationship between humanity and the animals that walked beside us, and still do. The carvings on those stone pillars may offer us only a glimpse of what once was. The rest of the story, it seems, lies buried, waiting for the day when we may finally uncover it. What other symbols, what other meanings, still lie beneath the dust of history, waiting for the curious to unearth? As we continue to peel back the layers of ancient history, we are confronted with a compelling and persistent mystery that seems to transcend time and geography. Across vast stretches of the earth, from the arid deserts of the Near East to the dense forests of Europe, ancient cultures have left us with mythologies, stories of gods, heroes, creation, and cataclysmic events. What is perhaps most astonishing is the striking similarity that exists between these mythological tales. From the flood myths found in Sumerian, Hebrew, and Greek traditions to the great battles of gods and titans, it is as though ancient civilizations, divided by both time and space, were telling stories from the same ancient source. This leads us to a central question. What is the shared origin of these early mythologies, and how did they spread across distant lands, seemingly without any clear connection between the peoples who told them? Consider, for instance, the flood myth. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, written around 2100 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, we hear the story of Utnapishtim, a man chosen by the gods to survive a catastrophic flood that will wipe out humanity. This narrative bears a remarkable resemblance to the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible, which was written much later, but with many similar details: the construction of a great ark, the salvation of animals, and the eventual repopulation of the earth. The similarities don't end there. Cultures as far afield as the Greeks, Indians, and Native Americans have their own versions of a great flood, each with uncanny parallels to the others. How could such a specific and detailed myth have emerged independently in so many different corners of the world? We could point to cultural diffusion, the idea that people moved and exchanged ideas over vast distances. But this doesn't fully explain how the core elements of these stories remained so consistent across disparate cultures. While it's true that trade routes, such as the famous Silk Road, facilitated the exchange of goods and ideas, these myths predate such exchanges by millennia. How, then, could distant cultures, from the Indus Valley to the Americas, have developed so many strikingly similar myths? Did they all draw from a common ancestral belief system, passed down from an even older and unknown civilization? Or, more provocatively, could there have been shared experiences, like natural disasters or cosmic events, that led to the creation of these powerful universal stories? Let's take a closer look at the myth of creation, a theme that also spans across cultures. In ancient Egypt, the Ennead of gods, with Atum at its head, tells a story of creation through spoken word, a theme also found in Sumerian and biblical myths, where gods create through speech or thought. The Greek philosophers and the Vedic texts of India speak of a cosmic order, or a world egg, from which the universe emerges. The presence of a primordial chaos or void preceding creation is another motif that appears in almost every culture. The Babylonian creation myth, the Mayan creation story, and the Genesis narrative all involve an empty, dark state from which the cosmos was born. Could these similarities point to some ancient, shared understanding of the cosmos, or are they simply universal human reflections on the mysteries of existence? Perhaps even more tantalizing is the figure of the hero, a central archetype in countless myths. In Mesopotamian mythology, we meet Gilgamesh, a king who embarks on a quest for immortality. In Greek mythology, the hero is Heracles, whose 12 labors mirror the trials faced by other heroes from distant lands. The Hindu epic of the Mahabharata is filled with warriors whose personal struggles mirror the challenges faced by Gilgamesh. The striking parallels in these heroic tales have led some scholars to propose the theory that there is a common cultural root from which these narratives sprang. Could this shared mythological landscape be the result of cultural diffusion through early human migrations? Archaeological evidence supports the idea that early humans were migratory and that groups moved across continents over thousands of years. Trade, both in goods and ideas, certainly existed in some form, but it is possible that these stories were not simply passed along via merchants and travelers. Oral traditions, which were the primary means of preserving and transmitting knowledge in ancient cultures, may have preserved common mythic structures long after their original meaning had been lost or transformed. However, the sheer similarity of these stories suggests something even more profound. What if these myths do not only represent common human experiences, but also the preservation of ancient knowledge that predates the rise of the civilizations that preserved them? Perhaps these mythologies are fragments of a forgotten past, passed down from a lost civilization that existed before written history. Such theories have led some to speculate that Göbekli Tepe, with its mysterious carvings and religious symbolism, might represent a connection to these ancient, shared origins of myth. Could the builders of Göbekli Tepe have been the progenitors of the myths that would echo across time, across continents? As we continue to explore these connections, another question arises. How much of these stories are based on actual historical events, and how much are mythic reflections of a distant past? The flood, for example, could have been inspired by a massive regional flooding event that was experienced by early human populations. Evidence of ancient flood events, such as the Black Sea deluge theory, suggests that a catastrophic flood may have occurred thousands of years ago, affecting the populations living around the Mediterranean and the Near East. Could this be the event that gave rise to the flood myths that would shape so many cultures? Yet, even if we could pinpoint a common origin for these stories, another question would remain. Why do these myths persist across time and space? Why have they continued to evolve, yet retain their core themes, even as cultures changed and diversified over millennia? Could the persistence of these stories in every corner of the world point to something universal, something encoded in the very psyche of humanity, passed down as both a way of understanding the world and as a tool for coping with the mysteries of life and death? In the absence of written records, these stories stand as one of the few remaining links to the worldviews of ancient peoples. The fact that similar myths continue to appear across regions and time periods suggests that these stories are more than just coincidences. They are part of a deeper, shared cultural fabric. They hint at something profound, something that unites humanity at its most primal level. As we delve deeper into these myths, we are left with more questions than answers. Are these stories the echoes of an ancient, forgotten knowledge? Did ancient cultures all share a similar vision of the world, shaped by common experiences or an ancient connection? Or are these myths merely the universal products of human imagination, arising independently in different parts of the world due to shared cognitive structures? The shared origins of early mythologies remain one of the great unsolved mysteries of human history. Whether they are fragments of a long-lost civilization, reflections of shared human experiences, or something even more enigmatic, these myths offer us a window into the ancient past, one that may still hold untold secrets, waiting to be uncovered. The mystery lingers, and as we continue our exploration, we must ask, what else might these myths reveal about our ancestors and the world they inhabited? As we continue to explore the enigmatic nature of ancient cultures, we are confronted with another mystery that has captured the imagination of historians, archaeologists, and astronomers alike: the alignment of structures with celestial bodies. This phenomenon, observed across diverse civilizations, raises profound questions about the relationship between early human societies and the heavens. Take, for instance, the majestic pyramids of Giza in Egypt, one of the most iconic and enduring symbols of ancient civilization. At first glance, these massive stone structures might appear as simple tombs or monuments built to honor kings. But a closer examination reveals something far more intricate. The pyramids are precisely aligned with the stars of the constellation Orion, a fact that has baffled scholars for centuries. The Great Pyramid, built during the 4th dynasty, aligns with the star Alnitak, the leftmost star of Orion's belt, within a fraction of a degree. Such precision raises an unsettling question. Why would the ancient Egyptians go to such lengths to align their tombs with a distant star system? Was it simply a matter of aesthetics, or was there a deeper, more symbolic connection to the stars themselves? As we explore the alignment of other ancient structures, Stonehenge in Britain, the temples of Teotihuacan in Mexico, the Nabta Playa stones in Palestine, we see a recurring theme. These structures are not randomly placed, but seem to have been meticulously designed to mirror the movements of celestial bodies. Stonehenge, for example, is aligned with the solstices, marking the longest day and the shortest day of the year. At Teotihuacan, the pyramids of the sun and moon are arranged to align with the rising sun during specific times of the year. Even the Machu Picchu complex in Peru, perched high in the Andes, features structures aligned with the solar equinox. What is the significance of these alignments? Were these cultures, separated by vast distances and centuries, somehow aware of the cosmic forces at play? And if so, how did they acquire this knowledge? The alignment of structures with celestial bodies is not confined to a few select examples. It is a global phenomenon that stretches across continents and millennia. These alignments often correspond to the sun, moon, stars, and planetary cycles. But the questions only deepen when we consider the purpose behind these alignments. Could these structures have served as astronomical observatories? Were they used to track the passage of time, marking the cycles of the seasons and agricultural patterns? This is the conventional explanation, that these early societies were keenly aware of the movements of the heavens and built these structures to track time and guide their agricultural practices. However, there are deeper, more speculative theories that suggest these alignments may have held spiritual or religious significance. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, believed that the stars, particularly those of the constellation Orion, were associated with the gods and the afterlife. Osiris, the god of the afterlife, was said to reside in the constellation of Orion, and the alignment of the pyramids with this star system could be seen as an attempt to connect the pharaohs with divine forces. In this light, the alignment of structures with the stars may have had a purpose far beyond the practical, perhaps serving as a bridge between the earthly realm and the heavens, a way to align the human with the divine. Some have even proposed that these alignments were meant to predict celestial events. The ancient Maya, for example, were able to track the movements of planets, particularly Venus, with incredible precision. The Dresden Codex, one of the surviving Maya texts, contains detailed records of Venus's movements, suggesting that the Maya used these celestial cycles to time important rituals and events. Could the ancient Egyptians, the Maya, and other early cultures have shared a common understanding of the sky, passed down over millennia? Or did they independently arrive at similar methods for observing and aligning with the stars? The theory of a global astronomical tradition is an intriguing one, but it raises the question: How could such knowledge have spread so widely, especially before the advent of long-distance travel or communication? One possible explanation is the idea of cultural diffusion, the spread of knowledge and ideas across different cultures through trade, migration, or conquest. We know that ancient peoples were not as isolated as we might think. Trade networks existed across the ancient world, from the Silk Road connecting China and the Mediterranean to the maritime routes that linked the peoples of the Indian Ocean. Could these networks have facilitated the exchange of astronomical knowledge along with goods? It is certainly possible. Yet the precision with which these structures are aligned suggests something far more sophisticated, perhaps an ancient, shared cosmological framework that transcended geographical and cultural boundaries. The idea that ancient peoples may have shared a universal astronomical knowledge is not without its challenges. Modern scholars have long debated the extent to which ancient civilizations could have communicated and shared such knowledge. It's one thing to align a structure with the solstices, but it's another to align it with the stars of distant constellations, or to track the movements of planets with such precision. Could the early peoples of the world have possessed this advanced knowledge? And if so, where did it come from? Some fringe theories propose that ancient cultures may have had access to knowledge passed down from a lost civilization, a civilization so advanced that it could manipulate the stars themselves. The idea of a pre-cataclysmic culture capable of creating such alignments is tantalizing, but remains speculative. Could the builders of Göbekli Tepe, with its sophisticated carvings and celestial symbolism, have been part of such a lost tradition? Were they, in some sense, the guardians of an ancient astronomical knowledge passed down through the generations? Another theory suggests that the alignments may have been intentionally designed to convey messages that were meant to be read by the gods or by future generations. Perhaps these structures served as ceremonial centers, places where rituals were conducted to honor the gods or to ensure the fertility of the earth. The alignments, in this view, would have been a way of ensuring that the human and divine worlds were in harmony, that the cycles of the heavens were reflected in the rhythms of life on earth. Yet, despite the theories and explanations, the purpose behind these alignments remains elusive. Why were ancient societies so invested in building structures that mirrored the movements of celestial bodies? Was it simply a way to track time, to mark the changing seasons? Or was there a deeper, more spiritual reason for aligning these monuments with the stars? As we reflect on the celestial alignments of ancient structures, we are left with more questions than answers. Was there an ancient, shared understanding of the heavens that transcended cultures and time periods? Or was this knowledge developed independently by different societies, based on shared observations of the cosmos? The answers remain hidden in the stones, the stars, and the silent ruins of ancient civilizations. In the end, the mystery of why ancient structures were aligned with celestial bodies invites us to wonder, what was the ancient connection to the heavens, and what knowledge might have been lost in the passage of time? What, if anything, have we yet to uncover from these ancient cosmic alignments? The search for answers continues, and with it, the tantalizing possibility that the stars may hold secrets about our past that we have yet to fully understand. The idea of ritual burials has always carried a profound mystery, reflecting humanity's reverence for the deceased and the belief in an afterlife. But there are instances that add layers of complexity to this ancient practice, ritual burials without clear social hierarchy. What can we make of a burial site where the dead are treated with similar reverence, regardless of their apparent status in life? What does it tell us about the social structures, or perhaps the absence of them, among early human societies? Imagine standing in the windswept plains of the Altai Mountains, where the Pazyryk culture once flourished. The burial mounds, known as kurgans, rise from the earth like silent sentinels to a long-forgotten people. The remains of horses, chariots, and warriors can still be found here, preserved in the permafrost, alongside the bodies of the elite. Yet, in these same mounds, archaeologists have uncovered ordinary individuals, women, children, and laborers, also buried with lavish gifts and offerings. This raises a perplexing question. Why were these individuals, seemingly of lower social status, treated with the same reverence as warriors and chieftains? The Pazyryk burial practices, first uncovered by Russian archaeologists in the 1920s, remain an enigma. Unlike in many other ancient cultures, where royal burials and the graves of the rich are lavishly distinct from those of commoners, the Pazyryk did not appear to show such differentiation. The most spectacular examples of this come from the Pazyryk kurgans, where high-ranking individuals are buried with intricate gold artifacts, fine textiles, and richly adorned horses, things one would expect from nobility or royalty. Yet within these same mounds, burials of individuals who appear to have had less prestigious lives, men, women, even children, are found with similar grave goods. Could this lack of differentiation in burial practices suggest a less stratified society? Or is it possible that the line between the elite and the common people was not as rigid as we typically assume? Was this an egalitarian society where death, for all people, was a great equalizer? Or perhaps a ritualistic approach to death, where everyone, regardless of their earthly station, had the same chance of being honored in the afterlife? This question extends far beyond the Pazyryk culture. Across the globe, there are other examples of burials that defy the expected hierarchy. In prehistoric Mesopotamia, archaeologists have uncovered joint burials, where groups of people, some clearly of higher status, are buried alongside individuals who appear to have been of lower rank. Ubaid period graves, dating back to around 5000 BC, reveal a complex pattern of burial practices in which individuals are laid to rest with similar goods, regardless of their social standing. While there are occasional distinctions, some individuals have more elaborate grave goods or more carefully constructed tombs, there is no clear-cut pattern of social stratification. Why, in a time of increasing agricultural development and the rise of early city-states, would burials be so democratic? Another site that deepens the mystery is Çatalhöyük, a vast Neolithic settlement in modern-day Turkey, dating from around 7500 BC. Here, the dead were buried beneath the floors of homes, a practice that in itself suggests an intimate relationship between the living and the dead. The burials, while accompanied by offerings such as pottery, figurines, and animal bones, show no significant differences between those buried beneath the floors of the poorer homes and those found beneath the wealthier dwellings. Even more striking, the bodies themselves, sometimes arranged in ways that suggest care, sometimes laid out with little regard for the conventions of social hierarchy, seem to indicate a society without strict social stratification. In ancient Egypt, too, we find curious examples. The early dynastic periods, particularly the Nabta culture, saw burial practices that, while offering insights into the development of Egyptian social structures, reveal much about the fluidity of status in death. Some tombs, though smaller in size, still held rich offerings of food, pottery, and ceremonial items that would later become associated with the elite of the Old Kingdom. These early tombs suggest a cultural reverence for the deceased, regardless of their position in life. Could the ancient Egyptians have had an understanding of death that transcended material wealth? Was there something more spiritual at play here, which allowed even those of lower status to be buried with honor? But there are even older sites that push the boundaries of what we consider ancient history. In the Andean highlands of South America, sites like Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, Peru, reveal an advanced understanding of construction and stonework. The site is characterized by massive stones, many weighing several tons, perfectly fit together without mortar, a technique that has puzzled archaeologists for centuries. Some researchers suggest that the stone-cutting techniques used here were far beyond anything that could have been accomplished with the tools of the time. These stones, intricately shaped and aligned with celestial events, suggest a knowledge of geometry and astronomy that would have been advanced even by modern standards. Yet the culture that built Sacsayhuaman left behind no definitive written records. Who were they, and how did they achieve such precision in their work? What knowledge did they possess, and what happened to it after their civilization disappeared? What's perhaps most intriguing about these megalithic sites is that they share a common thread. They're often isolated or far removed from other known civilizations, suggesting that their creators may have been part of a larger yet unrecorded network of ancient builders whose reach extended far beyond what we currently understand. Many of these sites share architectural features, such as the use of precisely cut stones and alignments with celestial events, that suggest a knowledge system passed across vast distances, perhaps even continents. But without direct evidence of such a network, we are left to piece together fragmented clues, offering more questions than answers. Even more perplexing is the absence of records. While we know that ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Indus Valley civilization left behind written records or monumental inscriptions, many of these megalithic sites appear to have been constructed by anonymous peoples. Was this a deliberate attempt to avoid the passage of history, or did these builders simply live in societies that did not value the written word? In some cases, scholars have speculated that the builders may have been shamanistic or religious groups, seeking to align themselves with celestial forces, nature, or the divine through these monumental stone structures. In other instances, the question arises whether the builders were part of an advanced civilization, a lost people whose achievements were overshadowed by more well-known empires, such as those of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Could these megalithic sites have been constructed by the remnants of a once great civilization, whose history has been wiped from the record by time, natural disasters, or even conquest? As we examine the mysteries of these unknown builders, we find ourselves confronting a paradox. The megaliths they left behind serve as testament to their incredible ingenuity, but the builders themselves remain cloaked in shadows. Could it be that we are on the cusp of discovering a lost chapter of human history, one that will reveal just how advanced early human civilizations may have been? Or are we merely gazing into a long-forgotten past that may never be fully understood? The truth remains elusive, and the question of who built these extraordinary sites may forever remain unanswered. Yet the stones and monuments they left behind continue to stand as silent witnesses, urging us to look deeper into the past and reconsider everything we thought we knew about the dawn of human civilization. What might still be hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? The answers lie out there, beyond the veil of history, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. As we continue our exploration of humanity's most enduring mysteries, we arrive at an unsettling question. Who were the unknown builders of lesser-known megalithic sites? Across the world, from the shrouded hills of Scotland to the desolate plains of Central America, immense stone structures stand, silent, enigmatic, and remarkably sophisticated. These megaliths, often constructed with precision and scale that defies easy explanation, continue to challenge our understanding of early human capabilities and their knowledge of the world. Yet, the identities of the builders behind many of these structures remain a mystery. Imagine standing before the towering stones of Göbekli Tepe, the site that rewrote our understanding of prehistoric civilization. Dating back to around 9,600 BC, it remains one of the most awe-inspiring and perplexing locations on Earth. But even as we grapple with its origin, there are countless other sites, equally awe-inspiring, equally enigmatic, scattered across the globe. In these places, the builders remain elusive, their motives, technologies, and even their identities submerged in the depths of history. One such site lies in the remote highlands of Scotland, near the village of Clava Cairns. Here, a series of ancient stone tombs form part of a mysterious megalithic complex. The stones, which align perfectly with the solstices, suggest a deep knowledge of the sun's movements. However, what's truly baffling is the structure's unusual design. Unlike the typical circular arrangements of many burial mounds, these cairns form a complex array of passageways and chambers, arranged with an understanding of space and geometry that was ahead of its time. Even more perplexing, the builders of Clava Cairns left no definitive trace. No known civilization appears to have been linked to their construction, and the reasons for these sacred spaces remain uncertain. Who were the builders of this mysterious site? Were they part of a lost civilization that predated known cultures like the Celts, whose arrival in Britain came millennia later? Or did they represent a more ancient and widespread tradition of megalithic builders scattered across Europe and beyond? The lack of evidence linking these sites to later, more well-documented civilizations leads many researchers to ponder whether these builders were an entirely separate people, with knowledge and skills lost to the passage of time. As we move from Scotland to the Caribbean, the mystery deepens. On the island of Cuba, a group of megalithic formations known as the Cuban stone circles has perplexed researchers for decades. Found deep within the dense forest, these stone rings, some over 3 meters in diameter, are arranged in tight, precise circles. The materials used are unusual. The stones are of a type not native to the area, and their sheer size and symmetry seem far beyond what would be expected from the island's indigenous cultures. Carbon dating suggests the site may be thousands of years old, far older than the known history of human settlement in the Caribbean. How did the builders of these stone circles transport such heavy materials from distant locations? What was their purpose in constructing these vast arrangements? And why has no civilization known to us left any clue as to their identity? It's a question that brings us to a critical crossroads in archaeology. How far back does human ingenuity stretch? Were these sites constructed by a people with advanced skills in architecture and engineering, or by an ancient civilization that has left no other trace, its people lost to time and history? Or were these stones placed by a society we have yet to discover, an ancient group whose knowledge of the land and the cosmos surpassed even our own understanding? Turning to Africa, we find the Great Zimbabwe, a site that defies many assumptions about early civilizations. The towering stone walls and elaborate enclosures of the site are constructed without mortar, a technique that was incredibly advanced for its time. Yet, the builders of Great Zimbabwe left no written records, and the city's mysterious decline has fueled much speculation. Who were these people? How did they achieve such architectural feats? Was there a forgotten trade route that connected them to distant lands, explaining the wealth and resources used in the city's construction? Some believe that the builders were not just early African peoples, but part of a larger Pan-African culture whose secrets were lost in the sands of time. But there are even older sites that push the boundaries of what we consider ancient history. In the Andean highlands of South America, sites like Sacsayhuaman near Cusco, Peru, reveal an advanced understanding of construction and stonework. The site is characterized by massive stones, many weighing several tons, perfectly fit together without mortar, a technique that has puzzled archaeologists for centuries. Some researchers suggest that the stone-cutting techniques used here were far beyond anything that could have been accomplished with the tools of the time. These stones, intricately shaped and aligned with celestial events, suggest a knowledge of geometry and astronomy that would have been advanced even by modern standards. Yet, the culture that built Sacsayhuaman left behind no definitive written records. Who were they, and how did they achieve such precision in their work? What knowledge did they possess, and what happened to it after their civilization disappeared? What's perhaps most intriguing about these megalithic sites is that they share a common thread. They're often isolated or far removed from other known civilizations, suggesting that their creators may have been part of a larger, yet unrecorded network of ancient builders whose reach extended far beyond what we currently understand. Many of these sites share architectural features, such as the use of precisely cut stones and alignments with celestial events, that suggest a knowledge system passed across vast distances, perhaps even continents. But without direct evidence of such a network, we are left to piece together fragmented clues, offering more questions than answers. Even more perplexing is the absence of records. While we know that ancient civilizations such as the Egyptians, the Sumerians, and the Indus Valley Civilization left behind written records or monumental inscriptions, many of these megalithic sites appear to have been constructed by anonymous peoples. Was this a deliberate attempt to avoid the passage of history, or did these builders simply live in societies that did not value the written word? In some cases, scholars have speculated that the builders may have been shamanistic or religious groups, seeking to align themselves with celestial forces, nature, or the divine through these monumental stone structures. In other instances, the question arises whether the builders were part of an advanced civilization, a lost people whose achievements were overshadowed by more well-known empires, such as those of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Could these megalithic sites have been constructed by the remnants of a once great civilization, whose history has been wiped from the record by time, natural disasters, or even conquest? As we examine the mysteries of these unknown builders, we find ourselves confronting a paradox. The megaliths they left behind serve as testament to their incredible ingenuity, but the builders themselves remain cloaked in shadows. Could it be that we are on the cusp of discovering a lost chapter of human history, one that will reveal just how advanced early human civilizations may have been? Or are we merely gazing into a long-forgotten past that may never be fully understood? The truth remains elusive, and the question of who built these extraordinary sites may forever remain unanswered. Yet the stones and monuments they left behind continue to stand as silent witnesses, urging us to look deeper into the past and reconsider everything we thought we knew about the dawn of human civilization. What might still be hidden beneath the earth, waiting to be uncovered? The answers lie out there, beyond the veil of history, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. As we trace the evolution of human societies, we encounter one of the most profound transformations in history: the transition from hunter-gatherers to complex societies. This shift, which began around 10,000 BC, marks the dawn of civilization itself. But what sparked such a monumental change? How did humans, who had survived for millennia by roaming the wild, hunting game and foraging for food, suddenly build cities, establish governments, and develop systems of trade and culture? In the heart of the Fertile Crescent, amidst the flowing rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates, we find one of the most significant clues. Here, in what is today Palestine, the ancient landscapes of the Natufian culture provide a starting point for understanding this transformation. The Natufians, who lived around 12,500 to 9,500 BC, were among the first people to adopt a semi-sedentary lifestyle, settling in one place for part of the year, but still relying on hunting and gathering for sustenance. It is within their stone-built structures, with their hearths and storage pits, that archaeologists have found evidence of an early attempt to forge a connection between humans and the land. Yet, this shift wasn't simply a matter of people deciding to settle down. Why did they make this change? What compelled them to stop wandering and settle near rivers, to tame the wild rather than simply live with it? Were they following the abundance of natural resources, or did they recognize a deeper, more profound connection to the earth? And what role did climate change play? The climate during this period was far from stable. The end of the last ice age had ushered in a period of warming that altered the environment and ecosystems. Large game became more scarce, forcing hunter-gatherers to adapt. In places like Jericho, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, we begin to see the earliest evidence of human adaptation. Here, around 9000 BC, large stone walls and towers were constructed, suggesting a shift not only in lifestyle, but in the need for defense and organized labor. The idea of communal living, of people coming together for mutual benefit, began to take shape in these early settlements. But the question remains, why did this transition occur so suddenly and so profoundly? Why did these early societies shift from being relatively egalitarian hunter-gatherer bands to more hierarchical and structured settlements? One possible explanation lies in the development of agriculture. The transition from wild plants and animals to domesticated species was revolutionary. Grains like wheat and barley were cultivated, and animals like sheep and goats were tamed. These developments not only provided a stable food supply, but also required people to settle in one place to tend to their crops and herds. The ability to store food allowed people to survive harsh seasons and led to the accumulation of wealth, an idea that hadn't existed in the same way before. But agriculture also created new challenges: the need for land ownership, the organization of labor, and the establishment of rules governing the distribution of resources. The transformation didn't just occur in Palestine. Across the globe, early societies began to change in parallel. In the Indus Valley, roughly contemporaneous with the Natufians, a culture emerged that also began to develop settlements and trade networks. The construction of large urban centers like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, with their advanced drainage systems and grid layouts, suggests a highly organized society. How did these early civilizations manage to achieve such feats of urban planning and civil engineering? Was this a result of long-term experimentation, or did the shift to complex societies happen almost suddenly, as though a collective decision had been made to pursue this new way of life? The rise of Jericho, Mohenjo-Daro, and Sumer in the ancient Near East, with their complex urban structures and early forms of writing and governance, seems to suggest that the development of agriculture was a catalyst for social change. But was it only agriculture that shaped these shifts, or were there other forces at play, forces that we have yet to fully understand? The construction of monumental structures like the ziggurats of Mesopotamia or the Great Pyramids of Giza, which would follow centuries later, begs another question. Why did societies suddenly feel the need to build on such a grand scale? These awe-inspiring works of engineering point to a collective ambition, a desire to mark a place on the earth that would endure for future generations. Was this driven by a growing sense of religious belief or a centralized authority that demanded such massive undertakings? Or did these constructions serve a more practical purpose, such as marking boundaries, facilitating trade, or securing power? The emergence of hierarchy in these early societies is perhaps one of the most puzzling aspects of this transition. Before agriculture, most human societies were likely egalitarian, with people sharing resources more equally within small, mobile groups. But as permanent settlements grew, so did social complexity. The need for defense, the accumulation of wealth, and the emergence of specialized labor all likely contributed to the creation of elites, individuals who gained control over resources and began to influence the direction of society. Over time, these elites became rulers, and with them came the development of formalized laws, religion, and systems of governance. In Mesopotamia, the first writing system, the Sumerian cuneiform, emerged around 3500 BC. This early form of writing, used initially to record trade and economic transactions, later evolved to include laws, stories, and religious texts. But the emergence of writing raises another mystery. Why did these societies feel the need to create such complex systems of communication? Was it merely for record-keeping, or was it part of a broader need to control and manage a more complex society? Was writing a tool of the emerging elites, giving them the power to legitimize their authority and control over vast populations? One theory suggests that the transition to complex societies was driven not just by the need for food security or defense, but by a fundamental shift in worldview. With the advent of agriculture and the permanent settlement of people, early humans began to form deeper, more lasting connections with the land. Did the shift from a nomadic to a sedentary lifestyle inspire a new sense of identity, a sense of belonging to a particular place and its history? And if so, did this connection with the land give rise to new ideas of ownership, religion, and power? At the same time, these early societies also began to develop trade routes, craftsmanship, and more specialized skills. The rise of the first cities and kingdoms in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley reflects the complexity of early human societies. As humans shifted from subsistence living to social complexity, a new set of questions emerged. Who had the power to shape these emerging civilizations? Who were the decision-makers, and how did they interact with the common people? Even more puzzling is the sudden spread of agricultural practices. Why did this revolution take place in such diverse parts of the world almost simultaneously? Did the knowledge of agriculture spread through trade and contact, or did it arise independently in multiple places, each civilization inventing it on its own? How did these societies come to develop such intricate and interconnected systems of trade, governance, and cultural exchange without modern communication or technology? In the end, we're left with questions that have no easy answers. The transition from hunter-gatherers to complex societies was not a simple evolution. It was a monumental shift that involved multiple factors, from environmental changes to technological innovations, to the very ways in which humans saw themselves and their place in the world. As we continue to uncover the remnants of this transition, we are left to wonder, what other mysteries about our ancient past will be uncovered in the future, and how will they change the way we think about the origins of civilization itself? The answers may be hidden beneath layers of soil, stone, and time, waiting to reveal themselves when we are ready to understand them. In the ancient world, human societies were often at the mercy of the climate, their lives shaped by the rhythms of the seasons, the weather patterns, and the unpredictable forces of nature. Yet, one of the most intriguing aspects of early human history is how these societies responded to changing climates. Why did certain groups of people migrate, sometimes over vast distances, while others remained anchored to their lands? What drove these patterns of early climate-driven migrations, and how did they shape the development of civilizations? Consider the Sahara, a region that was once vastly different from the dry desert we know today. As recently as 10,000 BC, the Sahara was a lush, green landscape, dotted with lakes and rivers. The remains of prehistoric animal life and human settlements, now buried beneath the sands, reveal a picture of a thriving ecosystem that supported early hunter-gatherer communities. Why did these people choose to settle here in the first place? And more importantly, what happened when the climate began to change? As the Holocene epoch progressed, the climate shifted. By 8000 BC, a slow but steady desertification process began to take hold, causing the region to dry up. Rivers receded, lakes evaporated, and the once rich environment became inhospitable. How did this dramatic shift affect the people who lived there? Archaeological evidence suggests that large-scale migrations began as early humans sought new places to live, following the retreating water and the scarcity of resources. One striking example of this early migration can be found in the Nile Valley. As the Sahara dried, many of the people living there migrated toward the Nile River in what is modern-day Palestine and Egypt. The river offered not only water but fertile soil for agriculture, a lifeline in a world rapidly becoming more arid. Why did this particular region attract so many? What drew human populations to the Nile, a river that would later serve as the cradle of one of the earliest and most enduring civilizations? Was it purely practical, or did these early settlers recognize something almost mystical about the river's predictability in an otherwise volatile environment? The rise of these early civilizations in the Nile Valley and surrounding areas is often attributed to their access to agricultural innovation, but could it also have been due to the migratory patterns driven by climate change? After all, the migrations of early humans weren't isolated incidents. They were driven by a combination of environmental shifts and survival instincts. As these people moved, they brought with them knowledge of tools, agriculture, and social structures. Could this network of migrations have acted as conduits for cultural exchange, passing knowledge from one group to another and contributing to the rise of early civilizations? But the migration patterns weren't confined to the Sahara or the Nile. On the other side of the world, in the far reaches of the Bering Land Bridge, human groups also made their way across from Asia into North America. Evidence of this migration is etched in the genetic and archaeological records. Researchers suggest that early humans crossed into the Americas around 13,000 BC, following large herds of animals that were part of a massive migration event. How did these early settlers, with their limited technology, manage to traverse such a harsh landscape? Did they have any knowledge of the weather patterns or climate conditions that helped them choose their path? And what impact did the climate shifts at the time have on their survival strategies? As climate change continued to drive migration patterns, it is likely that these early groups were not only adapting to their environments, but also changing the environments they inhabited. The spread of agriculture, for example, may have been accelerated by climate pressures, as humans sought to domesticate plants and animals in regions where the climate was no longer as conducive to hunting and foraging. But why did some groups develop farming techniques while others maintained a mobile, hunter-gatherer lifestyle? The Indus Valley Civilization provides another compelling example of climate-driven migration. The Harappan people, who flourished around 3000 BC, settled along the banks of the Indus River. Yet, evidence from the archaeological record suggests that climate change may have played a role in the decline of this civilization. What caused the collapse of such an advanced society? Some theories point to a changing monsoon pattern, which affected the river's flow and led to crop failures. The migration of populations out of the Indus Valley could have been a result of these disruptions. Was it simply survival, or did these migrations spark the diffusion of new ideas, technologies, and social structures? Similarly, the Mesoamerican civilizations, such as the Olmecs, Mayans, and Aztecs, also experienced climatic changes that had profound effects on their social and agricultural systems. The Mayan civilization, which reached its peak between 250 and 900 AD, is thought to have faced severe droughts that may have contributed to its eventual collapse. As the rainfall patterns shifted, the agricultural systems that sustained these civilizations faltered, possibly forcing large migrations. Did these migrations lead to the diffusion of Mayan knowledge, including their sophisticated understanding of astronomy, writing, and calendar systems? What role did climate play in the spread of their cultural influence throughout the region? Across the world, these ancient migrations driven by changing climates share striking similarities. Communities moved in search of water, food, and better living conditions, often bringing with them the seeds of the cultures that would later define great civilizations. Yet the question remains, how much of this migration was truly determined by climate, and how much by the evolving social structures and needs of these groups? One theory that has gained traction in recent years suggests that these migrations weren't simply the result of immediate climatic change, but were also part of longer-term cycles of movement driven by more gradual environmental shifts. Could early humans have developed an innate understanding of the climate cycles, a kind of early weather forecasting that allowed them to anticipate changes and migrate accordingly? It's a question that has led some researchers to consider the possibility that our ancient ancestors were far more attuned to their environment than we've ever realized. Another intriguing aspect of these migrations is the cultural diffusion that occurred as groups moved across continents and regions. As these migrating peoples settled in new areas, they didn't just bring their survival skills with them, they brought their belief systems, their tools, and their ideas. Could this pattern of movement have contributed to the global similarities in early mythologies, religious practices, and societal structures? From the shamanic traditions of Siberia to the earth-based spirituality of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, the migrations of ancient peoples might have played a far more significant role in shaping the world's ancient cultures than we previously thought. As we examine the ancient patterns of migration and the environmental factors that influenced them, one thing becomes clear. The story of human migration is far from simple. It is a complex web of survival, adaptation, and cultural exchange, shaped by forces far greater than the will of any one individual. Yet, there are still many unanswered questions. How did these early migrations influence the development of civilizations? How did humans, with limited technology, manage to survive such long and arduous journeys across changing landscapes? And how much of our ancient past is still hidden beneath the shifting sands, lakes, and mountains, waiting for us to uncover? The answers lie in the land, the artifacts, and the stories we have yet to discover. And as we continue to explore the ancient patterns of migration, we may just begin to see the profound ways in which climate and environment have shaped the trajectory of human history, and how these early movements may still echo through the generations that followed. In the heart of our world's history, long before recorded civilization began its first tentative steps in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, or by the banks of the Nile in ancient Palestine, a great mystery looms. It is a mystery of lost proto-civilizations, societies that perhaps flourished long before the advent of writing, monumental architecture, and formalized governments. What we know is fragmentary, whispers of ancient peoples, faint traces in the sands, and unanswered questions about what might have existed beneath the layers of time. The stones of Göbekli Tepe, standing tall in the arid landscape of southeastern Turkey, offer a tantalizing glimpse into this world. Though we often think of the dawn of civilization as rising with the birth of agriculture and the first city-states, Göbekli Tepe, built around 9,600 BC, tells us otherwise. Here, carved stones stand in intricate formations, depicting animals, symbols, and motifs that are still not fully understood. It is a complex site, far older than Stonehenge, and one that suggests a level of planning, communal effort, and spiritual belief that does not fit with the hunter-gatherer societies of its time. Who were the people behind Göbekli Tepe? What drove them to build such an elaborate and mysterious sanctuary, and why? Were they alone, or did they exist within the framework of a broader, unknown proto-civilization, perhaps lost to history? To understand the mystery of lost proto-civilizations, we must first ask ourselves, what do we actually know about prehistory? For most of human history, our ancestors had no written language, no monumental stone carvings, and no clear record of their daily lives. The first cities appeared only around 3000 BC in places like Sumer and Egypt, but before that, there were only scattered hints, a few buried settlements, tools, and artifacts. Even these remnants leave us wondering if they are merely the echoes of something far older, something lost to time. Consider the Bimini Road off the coast of the Bahamas. Beneath the turquoise waters, a series of mysterious stone formations have been discovered, stretching along the seabed in long, straight lines. Some argue that these stones are the remains of an ancient city, perhaps part of the fabled Atlantis or a lost civilization that existed before the rise of known ancient cultures. Could these formations be proof of a society that predated even the earliest civilizations we are familiar with? Or are they simply natural formations, the result of millennia of tidal and geological processes? The debate continues, and though mainstream science is hesitant to confirm the site's human origin, it remains an open question. Is this evidence of a forgotten culture or a natural anomaly? Another striking example lies in the Amazon rainforest. For centuries, it was believed that the dense, unyielding forest had concealed nothing but the remnants of small, isolated tribal communities. However, recent discoveries are beginning to rewrite this narrative. Advanced aerial surveys using LiDAR technology have revealed extensive networks of ancient roads, earthworks, and structures, evidence of large, complex societies that thrived long before European explorers ever set foot on the continent. These findings challenge previous assumptions that the Amazon was uninhabited by complex civilizations before the arrival of the Europeans. But who were these societies? Why did they disappear, and what caused their abrupt vanishing? Could they have been wiped out by climate change, disease, or the arrival of foreign invaders? Or was something even more mysterious at play? Across the Pacific Ocean, another mystery emerges with the ancient Moai statues of Easter Island. These giant stone figures, some weighing several tons and standing as high as 33 feet, are the product of a society that, at its peak, created a thriving culture on an isolated island in the middle of the ocean. How did they accomplish such monumental feats of engineering, and what happened to the society that built them? The collapse of Easter Island's civilization is often attributed to environmental degradation, but was that the full story? The mystery of the lost culture of the Rapa Nui people remains one of the great unanswered questions of human history. Did they have contact with other unknown civilizations, or did they collapse entirely due to internal factors, such as overpopulation or internal strife? If we look to the east, the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa in the Indus Valley also invite speculation. These ancient cities, dating back to around 2500 BC, boasted advanced urban planning, sophisticated sewage systems, and a script that remains undeciphered. They vanished around 1900 BC, with little explanation. Some believe that the decline of the Indus Valley civilization was the result of climate change, while others suspect political instability, invasion, or natural disasters. Could these cities have been part of a larger, more widespread proto-civilization that disappeared without a trace, leaving only these curious, enigmatic ruins behind? Yet another mystery can be found beneath the seas surrounding the Caribbean. The Bermuda Triangle, with its eerie reputation, has often been connected to ancient, sunken civilizations, lost to time and swallowed by the oceans. Among the theories that persist is that a once great civilization existed in this area, only to be destroyed by a catastrophic event, possibly a flooding or seismic shift that left no survivors. Could there have been an ancient proto-civilization along these shores, predating any of the known cultures of antiquity? And if so, how did it disappear? And why do we continue to find strange anomalies in the region to this day? Throughout the world, there are stories of lost cities and mysterious cultures, their ruins scattered and broken, their stories lost in time. From Zealandia, a submerged landmass beneath the Pacific Ocean, to the Himalayan remnants that speak of an ancient civilization's high-altitude settlements, it is clear that there are still unanswered questions. If these civilizations existed, what happened to them? Were they simply swallowed by natural catastrophes, or did they leave behind clues, written records, artifacts, or technologies that we have yet to uncover? As we search for answers to the riddle of these lost proto-civilizations, we must confront the possibility that we are only seeing the tip of the iceberg. There are no definitive answers, There are only fragments, pieces of the puzzle, that tantalize us with the promise of something more. Perhaps the world is far older than we believe, with civilizations rising and falling long before we ever knew to look. Perhaps the knowledge of these cultures is buried somewhere, hidden beneath the soil, beneath the waves, or even within the very minds of those who came before us. Could it be that the history of humanity is far deeper and more complex than we can comprehend? What are we missing? And what might still be hidden from view, waiting to be discovered? As we continue to unearth these lost remnants and attempt to piece together the forgotten past, one thing remains clear. The story of early human civilization is not finished, and the question of what came before, the unknown builders of proto-civilizations, is a mystery that still haunts the shadows of history.